Larry Harrison was a 42-year-old man who managed a popular Applebee's in Rochester, Minnesota. He was known for being warm and friendly. Larry was a big fan of the Minnesota Vikings and loved watching their games. He lived with his wife, Lauren, and their teenage son. They had a cozy house in a quiet neighborhood where they had lived for many years. Larry's family meant everything to him. He and Lauren had been married for over 15 years. They met in college and quickly fell in love. Larry was a devoted father who always found time for his son Brian, whether it was helping with homework or coaching his little league team. Larry's friendly nature made him a well-loved figure in Rochester. He often volunteered at the local food bank and participated in community cleanup events. In the days leading up to his death, Larry was busy planning a community event at his restaurant to celebrate the end of the football season. He wanted to bring people together for a big feast, featuring everyone's favorite dishes and, of course, the game highlights. The Super Bowl had just taken place on February 1, 2015, with the New England Patriots defeating the Seattle Seahawks. Larry was excited about the event and had been working extra hours to make sure everything was perfect. Larry also had personal plans. He was looking forward to a family trip to the Mall of America, where they planned to visit the amusement park and shop at their favorite stores. Larry was a simple man who found joy in everyday moments with his family and friends. In summary, Larry Harrison was a man who cared deeply about his family, his community, and his work. He was loved by many and had a bright future ahead of him, full of dreams and plans. His untimely death was a shock to everyone who knew him, leaving a void that could never be filled. On the morning of February 8, 2015, at around 7:30 a.m., Lauren Harrison found her husband, Larry, dead in their kitchen. It was a cold and snowy day in Rochester, Minnesota. Lauren had woken up early to prepare breakfast. As she walked into the kitchen, she was met with a horrifying scene. Larry's body lay on the floor, surrounded by a pool of blood. He had been stabbed multiple times. The sight was shocking and terrifying. Lauren immediately screamed for help. Her loud cries woke up the neighbors, who quickly rushed over to see what was happening. One of the neighbors, Mary Benedictus, who lived next door, ran over to check on Lauren. When she saw the gruesome scene, she quickly called 911. Mary described feeling a mix of fear and disbelief. She had known Larry for years and couldn't believe something so horrible could happen. It was like a nightmare, she later told the local news. Larry was such a kind man. I couldn't understand why anyone would do this to him. The 911 operators stayed on the phone with Mary, trying to keep her calm while emergency services were on their way. Lauren, in shock and grief, could barely speak. She kept repeating Larry's name, unable to comprehend the brutal reality before her. Within minutes, the police and paramedics arrived. The first officer on the scene noted the look of absolute horror on Lauren's face. He tried to comfort her while securing the area. Paramedics quickly assessed Larry, but it was clear that he had been dead for some time. News of Larry's death spread quickly through the small town. Local media, including the Rochester Post-Bulletin, reported the shocking incident. Neighbors and friends gathered outside the Harrison home, exchanging whispers and offering support to Lauren and her son. The local community, which had been buzzing with post-Super Bowl excitement just a week earlier, was now in a state of shock and mourning. The discovery of Larry Harrison's body marked the beginning of a tragic and complex investigation, one that would reveal dark secrets and shake the community to its core. The Rochester Police Department arrived quickly at the Harrison home on the morning of February 8, 2015. They secured the area and tried to comfort a shocked and distraught Lauren Harrison. The paramedics soon arrived and confirmed that Larry Harrison was dead. Detective Jonathan Gustafson, a veteran with over 20 years on the force, and Detective Sarah Brown, known for her sharp instincts, were assigned to lead the investigation. They arrived shortly after the initial officers. Detective Gustafson was known for his methodical approach, while Detective Brown had a keen eye for detail. The crime scene in the kitchen was gruesome. Blood was everywhere, on the floor, on the countertops, and even splattered on the walls. Larry had been stabbed multiple times, indicating a violent struggle. The detectives noted that there were no signs of forced entry, suggesting that Larry might have known his attacker. Detectives Gustafson and Brown started their investigation by examining the body. Larry had defensive wounds on his arms, which meant he tried to fight off his attacker. The detectives then began to collect evidence. They took fingerprints, blood samples, and photographs of the scene. They'd also collected the knife used in the attack, which was found near Larry's body. Forensic experts were called in to help analyze the evidence. They used tools like luminol to detect any hidden bloodstains and UV lights to find any traces of bodily fluids. They also used a technique called bloodstain pattern analysis to understand how the attack happened. This helped them piece together the events leading up to Larry's death. The detectives interviewed Lauren, who was still in shock. She couldn't provide much information at first, but she did mention hearing a noise in the kitchen during the night. The police also talked to the neighbors, including Mary Benedictus, who had called 911. Mary didn't see or hear anything unusual that night, which added to the mystery. The local media, including the Rochester Post-Bulletin, covered the story extensively. The community was in shock. Everyone wanted to know who could have done such a horrible thing to Larry, a well-loved and respected member of their town. The police set up a tip line, hoping someone might come forward with information. As the investigation progressed, the detectives knew they had to act quickly. The evidence pointed to someone close to Larry, but they needed more proof to make an arrest. The crime scene was just the beginning of a complicated and heartbreaking case. The first person the police investigated was Lauren Harrison, Larry's wife. Lauren was 38 years old and worked as a nurse at the local Mayo Clinic. She was known for her caring nature, but the detectives had to look closely at everyone connected to Larry. Lauren had been married to Larry for over 15 years. On the surface, they seemed like a happy couple, but the investigation revealed some troubling secrets. Lauren was having sex with Garmin Wilson, her 18-year-old son's best friend. This affair put a strain on her marriage and made her a suspect in Larry's murder. Detectives Gustafson and Brown brought Lauren in for questioning. The interview took place at the Rochester Police Department. Lauren appeared nervous and upset, which was understandable given the circumstances. The detectives asked her about her relationship with Larry and if there were any problems in their marriage. Lauren admitted to the affair with Garmin, but insisted she still loved Larry and would never hurt him. The detectives pressed Lauren about her whereabouts on the night of the murder. She claimed she was at home, asleep, and didn't hear anything unusual until she found Larry's body the next morning. The detectives noted her emotional responses, which seemed genuine, but they couldn't rule her out as a suspect just yet. They also asked Lauren about any arguments she and Larry might have had recently. She mentioned that they had been fighting about her affair, but she denied that these arguments ever got physical. Lauren's responses were consistent, but the detectives needed more evidence to determine her involvement in Larry's death. Throughout the investigation, Lauren maintained her innocence. She was cooperative but clearly devastated by Larry's death. Her emotions ranged from sadness to anger as she tried to come to terms with what had happened. The detectives had to consider every possibility, but Lauren's cooperation and the lack of direct evidence against her made it difficult to build a strong case. The police also looked into Lauren's phone records and financial statements. They found no suspicious activity that could link her directly to the murder. However, the affair with Garmin Wilson remained a significant point of interest. The detectives decided to bring Garmin in for questioning as well, hoping he might shed more light on the situation. As the police continued to investigate, they realized they needed to look at other potential suspects. Lauren's affair was a crucial piece of the puzzle, but it didn't provide all the answers. The detectives knew they had to keep digging to find the truth behind Larry Harrison's tragic death. With the discovery of Lauren's affair, the police turned their attention to Garmin Wilson, the 18-year-old best friend of Larry's son and Lauren's secret lover. Garmin was a high school senior and part-time mechanic. He was well-liked and charismatic, but his relationship with Lauren put him in a complicated situation. Detectives Gustafson and Brown brought Garmin in for questioning on February 9, 2015. The interview took place at the Rochester Police Department. Garmin appeared nervous but cooperative. The detectives asked him about his relationship with Lauren and how it might have affected Larry. Garmin admitted to having sex with Lauren, saying it started a few months ago. He insisted that he had no problems with Larry and that Larry never knew about the affair. Garmin claimed he had been home on the night of the murder, working on a car in his garage. His alibi seemed plausible, but the detectives needed to verify it. The police also questioned Garmin about his feelings toward Larry. Garmin described Larry as a father figure and said he admired him. He was adamant that he had no reason to harm Larry and was deeply saddened by his death. Garmin's emotions appeared genuine, but the detectives couldn't ignore the affair and its potential impact. To check Garmin's alibi, the detectives visited his home and garage. They found the car he claimed to have been working on and interviewed his parents, who confirmed that Garmin was home that night. The alibi held up, but the detectives remained cautious. Detectives Gustafson and Brown also looked into Garmin's phone records and social media. They found many graphic sexts and naked pictures sent between Garman and Lauren, but nothing that suggested Garman was involved in the murder. The text showed a sexual relationship, but there were no threats or plans to harm Larry. Garman's responses during the interrogation were calm and consistent. He showed genuine concern for Lauren and her son, and his cooperation with the police helped his case. However, the detectives still considered him a suspect due to his close relationship with Lauren and the potential motive stemming from the affair. The investigation into Garman revealed no direct evidence linking him to Larry's murder. His alibi and the lack of incriminating messages made it difficult for the police to build a case against him. While Garman remained a person of interest, the detectives knew they needed more concrete evidence to either confirm or clear his involvement. As the police continued their investigation, they realized Garman's involvement in the affair complicated the case, but it also highlighted the tangled relationships within the Harrison household. On February 10, 2015, just 2 days after Larry Harrison's murder, a heavy snowstorm hit Rochester, Minnesota. Despite the harsh weather, the police continued their investigation. That afternoon, Detective Sarah Brown discovered a crucial piece of evidence in an unexpected place. While searching through the house again, Detective Brown decided to take a closer look in the bedroom of Margaret Smith, Lauren's mother. Margaret, 64, lived with the Harrison family and had a history of mental health issues. Detective Brown found a series of hidden letters in Margaret's room. These letters were shocking and disturbing. The letters were addressed to Larry and were sexually explicit. They revealed that Margaret had a deep, unhealthy obsession with her son-in-law. She believed Larry was the reincarnation of her late husband, Edgar. This discovery changed the direction of the investigation dramatically. Detectives Brown and Gustafson immediately focused their attention on Margaret. They were stunned by the content of the letters. It was clear that Margaret's feelings for Larry were far from normal. The detectives also found that Margaret had recently stopped taking her medication for schizophrenia because she felt the drugs gave her tardive dyskinesia, a neurological disorder characterized by involuntary, repetitive movements, often resulting from long-term use of certain antipsychotic medications. The police interviewed Lauren again, this time asking about her mother. Lauren admitted that Margaret had always been very controlling and a little off. Margaret's mental health issues made her behavior unpredictable. Lauren was shocked to learn about the letters and the extent of her mother's obsession with Larry. Forensic experts analyzed the letters and confirmed they were written by Margaret. The police also looked into Margaret's medical records and found she had stopped taking her medication about a month before Larry's murder. This information suggested that Margaret's mental state might have played a role in the crime. The discovery of the letters was a turning point in the case. It provided the detectives with a new motive and a deeper understanding of the dynamics within the Harrison household. The investigation was far from over, but the police were getting closer to uncovering the truth about who killed Larry Harrison. The detectives now had a new prime suspect. Margaret's obsession with Larry, combined with her mental health issues, made her a likely candidate for the murder. However, they needed more evidence to make an arrest. As the investigation continued, the police turned their attention back to Margaret Smith, Larry's 64-year-old mother-in-law. Margaret lived with the Harrison family and had a history of mental health issues, including schizophrenia. She was taking medication that caused tardive dyskinesia, a condition that made her movements erratic. Detectives Gustafson and Brown brought Margaret in for a more thorough interrogation on February 12, 2015. Margaret was initially calm, but became defensive when asked about the sexually explicit letters she had written to Larry. She admitted to writing the letters, but claimed they were harmless expressions of her feelings. The detectives questioned Margaret about her relationship with Larry. She described him as a kind and caring man, but her obsession with him was clear. Margaret believed Larry was the reincarnation of her late husband, Edgar. This belief had driven her to write the letters and behave in a controlling manner toward her daughter, Lauren. Margaret's mental health issues were a significant factor in the investigation. The detectives learned that she had stopped taking her medication about a month before Larry's murder. This information suggested that Margaret's mental state might have played a role in the crime. The detectives also asked Margaret about her movements on the night of the murder. She claimed she was in her room with old episodes of gunsmoke and didn't hear anything unusual. However, her inconsistent responses and the disturbing content of the letters made the detectives suspicious. Forensic experts analyzed the knife used in the murder and found traces of Margaret's fingerprints. This evidence, combined with the letters and her erratic behavior, made her a strong suspect. The detectives also found that Margaret had a motive. her sexual obsession for Larry, and her desire to keep control over Lauren and her grandson. Margaret's reactions during the interrogation ranged from calm to agitated. She insisted that she loved Larry and would never hurt him, but her responses were often confusing and contradictory. The detectives noted her unstable behavior and continued to press her for details. The investigation revealed that Margaret's mental health issues and obsession with Larry had created a dangerous situation. The combination of her stopping her medication and her irrational beliefs about Larry pointed to a possible motive for the murder. As the police gathered more evidence, they realized they needed to consider all angles. Margaret's mental state and her history of erratic behavior were crucial pieces of the puzzle. The detectives knew they had to be thorough in their investigation to ensure they uncovered the truth behind Larry Harrison's tragic death. On Valentine's Day 2015, the Rochester police made a breakthrough in the case. After collecting and analyzing all the evidence, they identified Margaret Smith, Larry's 64-year-old mother-in-law, as the murderer. Margaret, who lived with the Harrison family, had a long history of mental health issues. Her obsession with Larry and her deteriorating mental state had led to a tragic outcome. The police pieced together what happened on the night of the murder. Margaret had confronted Larry in the kitchen, cruelly demanding that he have sex with her. When Larry loudly refused, Margaret's obsession turned violent. She grabbed a kitchen knife and, in a fit of rage, stabbed Larry multiple times. The attack was frenzied, and Larry had tried to defend himself, but he couldn't escape. Detectives Gustafson and Brown, along with a team of officers, went to the Harrison home to arrest Margaret. It was early in the morning, around 6:00 a.m., when they arrived. Margaret was in her room, and when the police informed her of the charges, she initially appeared confused and then became hysterical. She kept screaming this Valentine's Day, "I give my heart to you, Larry," and claimed that Larry's death was an accident caused by her tardive dyskinesia, but the evidence against her was overwhelming. The arrest shocked the entire Harrison family. Lauren and her son were devastated. They couldn't believe that Margaret, their mother and grandmother, could commit such a horrible act. The neighbors, who had always seen Margaret as a frail and eccentric old lady, were equally stunned. The community was in disbelief as news of the arrest spread. Lauren and her son struggled to come to terms with the revelation. They were torn between their grief for Larry and their disbelief about Margaret's actions. The arrest brought some closure to the case, but left the family in deep emotional turmoil. The police took Margaret into custody, and she was booked at the local jail. During the booking process, Margaret remained erratic and often incoherent. The police ensured that she received medical attention for her mental health issues, but her legal troubles were just beginning. The community, still reeling from Larry's murder, had mixed reactions. Some were relieved that the police had found the killer, while others were saddened by the tragic circumstances that led to the crime. The local media, including the Rochester Post-Bulletin, covered the arrest extensively, adding to the public's shock and sorrow. The arrest of Margaret Smith marked a significant turning point in the investigation. The police had successfully identified and apprehended the murderer, but the road to justice was far from over. The next step would be the trial, where the full extent of Margaret's actions and the impact on the Harrison family would be revealed. Margaret Smith's trial began on April 20, 2016, at the Olmsted County Courthouse. The courtroom was packed with members of the community, including Larry Harrison's family and friends. The trial attracted significant media attention, with local news outlets like the Rochester Post-Bulletin providing daily updates. The prosecutor, David Benedictus, 45, was known for his tough approach. He argued that Margaret's obsession with Larry and her decision to stop taking her medication led to the brutal murder. Benedictus presented the love letters as evidence of Margaret's unhealthy fixation and called on forensic experts to explain how the fingerprints on the knife matched Margaret's. Margaret's defense attorney, Linda Lou Green, 50, had a reputation for taking on challenging cases. She argued that Margaret's mental health issues and the side effects of her medication, including tardive dyskinesia, played a significant role in the incident. Green tried to convince the jury that the murder was not premeditated but a tragic accident. Throughout the trial, Larry's family was visibly emotional. Lauren Harrison and her son attended every day, struggling to process the loss of Larry and the betrayal by Margaret. The courtroom atmosphere was tense as each side presented its case. The jury deliberated for 2 days before reaching a verdict. On May 5, 2016, they found Margaret Smith guilty of second-degree murder. The judge sentenced her to 25 years in prison, considering her mental health issues but also acknowledging the severity of her crime. The verdict brought a sense of closure but also a deep sadness for Larry's family. Lauren expressed relief that justice had been served but was heartbroken over the loss of her husband and the actions of her mother. The community had mixed reactions, with some feeling the sentence was fair while others thought it was too lenient or too harsh. Margaret's reaction to the verdict was one of shock. She maintained that she never meant to kill Larry and claimed the murder was an accident. Her erratic behavior continued, and she was transferred to a facility where she could receive mental health treatment while serving her sentence. The prosecution's argument was strong, highlighting Margaret's obsession and the premeditated nature of the murder. David Benedictus was praised for his thorough work in securing the conviction. On the other hand, Linda Lou Green's defense was seen as compassionate but ultimately unconvincing to the jury. The trial's conclusion marked the end of a painful chapter for the Harrison family. Friends and neighbors offered their support, trying to help Lauren and her son move forward. The verdict and sentencing were widely covered by the media, bringing attention to the complexities of mental health in criminal cases. The impact of Larry Harrison's murder and the trial of Margaret Smith would be felt in Rochester for years to come. The community, while relieved that justice was served, remained deeply affected by the tragic events that unfolded in February 2015. After Margaret Smith's trial and sentencing, life slowly began to return to a new normal for the Harrison family and those involved in the case. For Lauren Harrison and her son, the aftermath of Larry's murder was a difficult journey of grief and healing. They received support from friends, neighbors, and the community who rallied around them during this challenging time. Lauren decided to move out of the house where the tragic event occurred. With the help of close friends and local volunteers, she found a new home in a quieter neighborhood of Rochester. She wanted to create a fresh start for herself and her son, away from the painful memories of their old house. In the months following the trial, Lauren focused on rebuilding her life. She returned to work at the Mayo Clinic, where she received support from colleagues and patients alike. Lauren's strength and resilience inspired many in the community who admired her courage in the face of adversity. Larry's colleagues at the local Applebee's where he worked also honored his memory. They organized a memorial service in March 2015, inviting friends, customers, and community members to celebrate Larry's life. The event featured heartfelt speeches, music, and a slideshow of photos showcasing Larry's dedication to his work and his love for his family. Meanwhile, Margaret Smith began serving her sentence at a state correctional facility. She received ongoing mental health treatment to manage her condition and the effects of her medication. Despite her tepid attempts to ask forgiveness for what she did, Margaret eventually succumbed to COVID-19 in May of 2021 and was buried without a gravestone in the jailhouse cemetery. The Rochester community, though deeply affected by the events of February 2015, came together to support each other. Local organizations offered counseling services and support groups for those affected by violent crimes. The media continued to follow the aftermath of the case, highlighting the importance of mental health awareness and support for families dealing with loss. As time passed, Lauren Harrison and her son found ways to remember Larry's kindness and generosity. They visited his favorite places in Rochester and shared memories with friends and family. While the pain of losing Larry would always be with them, they focused on honoring his legacy and finding hope in the future. The impact of Larry Harrison's murder resonated throughout Rochester, reminding everyone of the fragility of life and the importance of community support. The Harrison family's journey through grief and healing served as a testament to the strength of the human spirit in the face of tragedy. In the heart of Oklahoma City, Joanna Rangel, 56, lived a life that seemed like it came straight out of a movie. As the heir to a vast oil and gas fortune, Joanna was a well-known figure in the city's high society. With a history of attending prestigious schools, she was not only wealthy but also well-educated and respected. Joanna was married to Frank H. Rangel, a powerful state senator, making them one of the most influential couples in Oklahoma. They had children who looked up to their mother as a role model. Joanna's personality was as bright as the Oklahoma sun. She was known for her kindness, her love for her family, and her passion for the ranch life that was part of her family's heritage. Apart from managing her family's estate, she was deeply involved in charity work, always looking to give back to her community. In the days leading up to her untimely death in January 2000, Joanna was full of dreams and plans. With the new millennium, the world buzzed with excitement and people everywhere were talking about the Y2K bug scare that turned out to be a false alarm. Amidst this, Joanna was planning to rejuvenate her appearance with a facelift. She hoped this would help her step confidently into the new decade, continuing her public and private duties with renewed vigor. Little did anyone know, this decision would lead to a tragic turn of events that would shock the community and leave a lasting impact on her family and friends. On the morning of January 15, 2000, Oklahoma City was draped in a blanket of gray clouds, setting a somber mood across the town. It was on this chilly winter day that the unexpected tragedy of Joanna Rangel unfolded within the sterile walls of a renowned private clinic, a place where the elite of Oklahoma City often turned to in pursuit of perfection. Joanna, a prominent figure in the city's social circles, had scheduled a facelift surgery, aiming to start the new millennium with renewed confidence. However, what was supposed to be a routine procedure turned fatal. Joanna's life came to an abrupt end on the operating table, leaving behind a wave of disbelief and sorrow. The grim discovery was made by the surgical team itself, led by Dr. Jonathan Humberston, the clinic's top surgeon. The atmosphere in the operating room shifted from professional calm to chaotic distress as the team realized Joanna could not be revived. Among them was Angie Ruth Niles, a young nurse who found herself in a situation no medical professional ever hopes to face. Despite their extensive training, nothing could have prepared them for the shock and immediate grief of losing a patient in such circumstances. Word of Joanna's death quickly spread beyond the clinic's walls, casting a shadow over the city. The community, still buzzing from the recent New Year's celebrations and the global sigh of relief that the Y2K bug had been a non-event, was now mourning the loss of one of its most beloved figures. Joanna's death, occurring in a place where she sought to enhance her beauty, added a tragic irony to her passing and left the city in search of answers. Shortly after the tragic news of Joanna Rangel's death during surgery broke out on that overcast January morning in 2000, Oklahoma City police swiftly arrived at the private clinic. The clinic, known for its exclusive clientele and top-notch services, had suddenly become the center of a grim investigation. Leading the investigation were Detective Mickey Larson and his partner, Detective Sarah Gumbert. Both were experienced officers, but the nature of this case was unlike any they had encountered before. The crime scene was not what they typically faced. There were no signs of a struggle or violence. Instead, they stepped into a high-tech operating room, where the only evidence of something gone wrong was the medical equipment and the lifeless body of Joanna Rangel. Detective Larson, known for his methodical approach, immediately began documenting the scene, taking notes on everything from the arrangement of surgical tools to the settings on the medical monitors. Detective Gumbert, on the other hand, focused on interviewing the shocked staff, trying to piece together the timeline of events. Their objective was clear: to understand how a routine cosmetic surgery could turn fatal. The police collected various items for analysis, including syringes, vials of medication, and the records of the anesthesia machine. Every piece of evidence was handled with care, knowing that any could hold the key to unraveling the mystery of Joanna's death. As news vans from local stations like K4 and KWEV crowded the clinic's parking lot, the police continued their meticulous work inside. The investigation into Joanna Rangel's death promised to be a high-profile case, with every detail scrutinized by both the authorities and the public. In the wake of Joanna Rangel's unexpected death, the focus of the Oklahoma City police investigation quickly turned to Dr. Jonathan Humberston, age 48. As the surgeon who performed Joanna's facelift, Dr. Humberston was at the center of the tragic event. Known as Oklahoma City's premier plastic surgeon, he was a familiar face in the same high society circles as Joanna. However, rumors had been swirling about his struggles with alcohol, casting a shadow over his professional reputation. Dr. Humberston's background was impressive. He had attended some of the most prestigious medical schools in the country and had built a successful practice in Oklahoma City. His dreams were as big as his achievements. He aspired to be recognized as one of the best plastic surgeons nationwide. But beneath the surface of his professional success, there were whispers about the pressure he faced and how it might have led him to seek solace in alcohol. When detectives Larson and Gumbert sat down with Dr. Humberston for questioning, they encountered a man who was both defensive and visibly stressed. He insisted that Joanna's surgery was routine and that he had performed similar procedures countless times without issue. Yet, his demeanor fluctuated wildly during the interrogation, swinging from anger to moments of profound silence, as if he was grappling with the weight of the situation. The police were keen to understand every detail of the surgery, from the preparation to the moment things took a tragic turn. They questioned Dr. Humberston about his actions and decisions in the operating room, looking for any signs of negligence or malpractice. The interrogation was thorough, leaving no stone unturned, as the detectives aimed to piece together how a procedure meant to bring joy ended in sorrow. As the investigation continued, the story of Joanna Rangel's death began to capture the attention of the entire city. Local newspapers and TV stations were filled with updates and speculations about the case. This tragedy had struck a chord, reminding everyone of the fragility of life. As the investigation into Joanna Rangel's death unfolded, the spotlight shifted to Frank H. Rangel, Joanna's husband, who was 59 years old. Frank was a state senator, well-known and respected in government circles. His marriage to Joanna had united two powerful families, making them a prominent couple in Oklahoma City. Despite his influential position, rumors of financial difficulties and a secret affair began to surface, adding complexity to the case. Frank Rangel was a man of ambition, dreaming of leaving a lasting legacy in Oklahoma politics. However, his personal life was not as straightforward as his public persona suggested. The police were curious about any motives Frank might have had, considering the whispers about his extramarital relationship and potential financial gains from Joanna's untimely death. When detectives Larson and Gumbert interviewed Frank, they encountered a man who projected calm and grief over the loss of his wife. He spoke of Joanna with respect and affection, denying any involvement in her death. Frank's demeanor during the interrogation was composed, even as the detectives probed into sensitive areas of his personal and financial life. He insisted that his marriage, despite any rumors, was strong and that he had no reason to wish harm upon Joanna. The detectives were meticulous in their questioning, aware that the dynamics of the Rangel family could hold clues to the mystery. They examined Frank's alibi, financial records, and his interactions with Joanna leading up to the surgery. The investigation was thorough, leaving no aspect of Frank's life unexplored. The case garnered media attention, and the intrigue of a high-profile investigation, combined with the drama of personal and political scandals, captivated the city. In a time when the world was celebrating the start of a new millennium, the tragic death of Joanna Rangel added a somber note to the year's beginning. On a brisk January afternoon, a week after the tragic death of Joanna Rangel, Oklahoma City police made a significant breakthrough in the case. New evidence emerged that would pivot the direction of their investigation. During a meticulous review of the clinic's security footage, detectives spotted something alarming. Angie Ruth Niles, a young nurse who was part of the surgical team, was captured on camera tampering with medical supplies the night before Joanna's procedure. The weather outside mirrored the chill of the revelation as a cold front had swept through Oklahoma City, leaving streets slick with ice. Inside the warm confines of the police station, detectives Larson and Gumbert watched the footage repeatedly, their seasoned eyes catching the subtle but deliberate actions of Angie. This discovery raised a multitude of questions about her involvement and motives. Armed with this new evidence, the detectives wasted no time. They revisited the clinic, this time focusing on gathering any physical proof that could link the tampered supplies to Joanna's surgery. They collected vials, syringes, and any medications that could have been compromised, ensuring each item was meticulously cataloged for forensic analysis. The police's response to this breakthrough was swift. They knew that this piece of evidence could be the key to unraveling the mystery of Joanna's death. The community, still reeling from the shock of losing one of its most beloved figures, followed the developments closely. Local news outlets were quick to report on the police's findings, adding another layer of intrigue to the high-profile case. In a city that had just celebrated the dawn of the new millennium with optimism and joy, the turn of events in Joanna Rangel's case served as a stark reminder of the unpredictability of life. As the investigation continued, the police were determined to piece together the puzzle, driven by the evidence that had unexpectedly come to light. With the investigation taking a dramatic turn, the focus shifted to Angie Ruth Niles, a 23-year-old nurse at the clinic and a new, critical suspect in Joanna Rangel's death. Angie, who had been captured on the clinic's security footage tampering with medical supplies, suddenly found herself at the center of the police's attention. Known as Frank Rangel's mistress and a key figure in the clinic, Angie's involvement painted a complex picture of personal and professional entanglements. Angie had dreams of moving up in the world, seeing her relationship with Frank as a ticket out of her current life. Her aspirations, however, were now overshadowed by the serious allegations against her. When detectives Larson and Gumbert brought Angie in for questioning, they encountered a young woman whose demeanor oscillated between nervousness and defiance. Her initial calmness gave way to moments of anger as the interrogation intensified, revealing the pressure she was under. The detectives probed Angie about her actions on the night before the surgery, her relationship with Frank, and her presence during the fatal procedure. They were keen to understand her motives, questioning whether jealousy, ambition, or coercion played a role in her actions. Angie's responses were evasive at first, but as the evidence mounted, the facade began to crack, suggesting that there was more to her involvement than initially appeared. As the news of Angie's interrogation spread, the community was abuzz with speculation. Local media, including stations like KWTV and the Oklahoma Gazette, closely followed the developments, providing updates that kept the city on edge. In a time when Oklahoma City was still basking in the optimism of the new millennium, the case of Joanna Rangel introduced a narrative filled with intrigue and betrayal, capturing the attention of a community grappling with the unfolding drama. The investigation into Angie Ruth Niles added a new layer of complexity to the case, as detectives worked tirelessly to piece together the events leading to Joanna's tragic death. With each new revelation, the city watched, waiting for justice to be served in a case that had touched the hearts of many. As the investigation into Joanna Rangel's tragic death deepened, all clues began pointing towards Angie Ruth Niles, the 23-year-old nurse and the mistress of Frank Rangel. The evidence, particularly the security footage of Angie tampering with the medical supplies, was damning. It became clear that Angie, driven by a mix of personal ambition and influence from Frank, played a pivotal role in the events leading to Joanna's death. Angie's dreams of a future with Frank, away from the shadows of his marriage to Joanna, had morphed into a sinister plot. Under the guise of a routine facelift procedure, Angie manipulated the medical supplies, leading to fatal complications during Joanna's surgery. The police, after gathering all necessary evidence and corroborating the sequence of events, moved to make the arrest. On a cold morning in late January, just as the city was beginning to move past the Y2K frenzy and the excitement of the new millennium, Oklahoma City police arrived at Angie's residence. The arrest was swift, capturing Angie by surprise. She had been planning to flee the country with Frank, with tickets booked for a flight to Colombia. However, the police intercepted before their connecting flight to DFW Airport, preventing their escape. Angie's reaction to her arrest was a mix of disbelief and resignation. She had underestimated the extent of the investigation and the evidence against her. Frank, on the other hand, remained silent, his political career and personal life in ruins. The news of the arrest sent shockwaves through Oklahoma City. Local media, including the Oklahoman and News 9, were quick to cover the story, with reporters stationed outside the courthouse and the police station, capturing every moment of the unfolding drama. The community, still reeling from the loss of Joanna, found some solace in the swift action of the police. Joanna's family, devastated by her loss, expressed a cautious relief at the arrests, hopeful for justice in the wake of their unimaginable grief. The trial of Angie Ruth Niles, the nurse implicated in the tragic death of Joanna Rangel, became a focal point for Oklahoma City. As the courtroom drama unfolded, the city watched with bated breath, eager for justice in a case that had gripped the community's heart. The prosecution, led by the determined Amy and Clark, a seasoned attorney known for her tough stance on crime, presented a compelling case against Angie. They outlined how her actions, influenced by her relationship with Frank Rangel, directly led to Joanna's untimely death. On the defense side, John J. Mercian, a skilled lawyer with a reputation for handling high-profile cases, argued for leniency. He painted Angie as a young woman caught in a web of manipulation, her judgment clouded by love and ambition. Despite his efforts, the evidence against Angie was overwhelming, leaving little room for doubt about her involvement. The trial was the talk of the town, with daily updates dominating the news. Stations like Coco 5 and the Oklahoman provided extensive coverage, capturing the emotional testimonies in the tense atmosphere in the courtroom. Joanna's family, present throughout the proceedings, displayed a mix of sorrow and hope, clinging to the belief that justice would be served. When the verdict was finally announced, Angie was found guilty, a decision that sent a wave of relief through the courtroom and beyond. She was sentenced to life in prison, a punishment that Joanna's family felt was just, yet they knew no sentence could fill the void left by Joanna's death. The community, while satisfied with the outcome, reflected on the tragedy, pondering the fragile nature of life and the consequences of our choices. The verdict and sentencing closed a chapter on a case that had captivated Oklahoma City, leaving a lasting impact on all involved. As the news of the sentencing spread, discussions about the case continued, with many hoping it would serve as a cautionary tale about the dangers of envy and deceit. In the months following the trial and sentencing of Angie Ruth Niles for the tragic death of Joanna Rangel, Oklahoma City began to heal. The high-profile case that had once dominated conversations at every corner of the city slowly receded into the background, leaving behind a community forever changed by the events. Detectives Mickey Larson and Sarah Gumbert, the officers who had tirelessly worked to bring justice to Joanna, continued their service with the Oklahoma City Police Department. The case had left an indelible mark on their careers, reinforcing their commitment to upholding the law and serving their community. They often found themselves reflecting on the complexities of human nature they had witnessed during the investigation. For Joanna's family, life without her was a difficult adjustment. They channeled their grief into continuing her legacy, dedicating themselves to the charitable causes she had been passionate about. The ranch, a place Joanna loved dearly, became a sanctuary for the family, a place where they could feel close to her spirit and keep her memory alive. Angie Ruth Niles, now serving a life sentence, faced the consequences of her actions. The reality of her situation set in as she adjusted to life behind bars, a stark contrast to the future she had once envisioned with Frank Rangel. Frank, whose involvement in the case had shattered his career and personal life, struggled to come to terms with the fallout. His dreams of political legacy and influence were irreparably damaged. The community of Oklahoma City, while moving forward, would not forget the tragedy that had unfolded among them. Local media outlets, including the Oklahoman and K4TV, occasionally revisited the case, reminding residents of the importance of justice and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity. As life continued in the aftermath of the trial, those touched by the case found ways to move on, each carrying their own lessons and memories of a case that had captivated a city and tested the bonds of its community. The tragic case of Joanna Rangel serves as a somber reminder of the lengths to which individuals will go to reshape their destinies, often with devastating consequences. The victim in this story is Henry Lillane, a 57-year-old successful CFO of Blue Shield, one of the largest insurance companies in the state of North Carolina. Henry was a pillar of the community, living in a $1.2 million colonial-style mansion in the affluent neighborhood of Governor's Club in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Married to Audrey Lillane, a former Miss Massachusetts, for 30 years. Henry relished his role as a devoted father. He had raised 3 children, Alex, Ben, and Claire, all of whom had gone on to attend prestigious Ivy League colleges. Henry was known for his unwavering dedication to his family and his impeccable work ethic. He was a devout Catholic, the generous philanthropist, and a respected leader in his field. He was 57 years old and in the prime of his life. But in January of 2009, Henry's life would take a tragic turn. Henry Lillane would be found dead in his own home under circumstances that baffled investigators. The once idyllic image of his life would begin to unravel, revealing hidden secrets and complex relationships. Who killed Henry Lillane and why? How did the killer get into his secure home, and how did he escape without leaving any traces? What secrets did Henry hide behind his perfect facade, and what clues did he leave behind? This is the story of Henry Lillane, a man who had everything and lost it all in a matter of seconds. The morning of January 19, 2009 was supposed to be a normal day for Henry Lillane, a 57-year-old CFO of a leading insurance company in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. He had woken up early, as usual, and headed to his home office to check his emails and prepare for a conference call. He had a busy schedule ahead of him, but he was looking forward to spending the weekend with his wife, Audrey, who was returning from a trip to Boston to visit her sister. But Henry's plans were abruptly cut short by a deadly intruder. Sometime between 8 and 9 a.m., someone entered Henry's office through a broken window on the ground floor of the building. The intruder climbed the stairs to the second floor, where Henry's office was located, and shot him once in the chest with a 9mm handgun. The bullet pierced Henry's heart, killing him instantly. The intruder then fled the scene, leaving behind no clues or motives. Henry's body was discovered by Audrey, who arrived home around 9:30 a.m. She had taken a taxi from the airport, as Henry had told her he would be busy and couldn't pick her up. She entered the house through the front door, using her spare key, and called out for Henry. When she got no answer, she went upstairs to his office, thinking he might be on the phone. She opened the door and saw him slumped in his chair, blood staining his shirt. His computer was still on, showing a Word document with some financial figures. She screamed and called 911. The police would arrive within minutes and cordoned off the crime scene, baffled by the motiveless murder of Henry Lane. Who would want to kill such a successful and beloved person? Was it a random act of violence or a carefully planned assassination? And how did the killer manage to escape without being seen or heard? These were the questions that haunted everyone as they tried to unravel the mystery of Henry's death. As the news of Henry Lane's death spread, the Chapel Hill community was stunned and saddened. Henry was a respected and successful CFO of a major insurance company, as well as a loving husband and father of 3. He had no known enemies or troubles, and his life seemed perfect. Who would want to kill him, and why? The police, led by Detective George Drankles, were determined to find out. They arrived at Henry's house shortly after his wife, Audrey, called 911. She'd found him dead in his home office, shot in the chest, with his computer still on. She had just returned from a trip to Boston, where she had visited her sister. She told the police that Henry had stayed behind to work and that they had spoken on the phone the night before. She said he sounded normal and happy and that he had no plans to meet anyone that morning. The police searched the house and the office, looking for clues. They found no signs of forced entry, except for a broken window on the ground floor near the back door. The window was covered by a curtain, and the police speculated that the killer had used it to enter and exit the building. However, nothing was missing or disturbed. Henry's wallet, laptop, cell phone, and other valuables were all in place. The police also found no fingerprints, DNA, or other traces of the killer. The only piece of evidence they had was the bullet that had killed Henry. It was a 9mm round fired from a handgun. The police ran a ballistics test, hoping to match it to a registered weapon, but the results came back negative. The gun was either unregistered or had been modified to avoid detection. The police interviewed Henry's coworkers, neighbors, friends, and family, hoping to find a motive or a suspect. They learned that Henry was a hard-working and honest businessman who had worked for the same insurance company for over 20 years. He had risen through the ranks to become the CFO, earning a 6-figure salary and a reputation for integrity. He had no conflicts or disputes with anyone at work, as far as anyone knew. He was also a devoted family man who had raised 3 children with Audrey, his wife of 30 years. All of his children had graduated from Ivy League colleges and were pursuing their own careers. Henry had a close relationship with all of them and was proud of their achievements. He also had a large circle of friends who described him as generous, kind, and fun-loving. He had no vices or secrets as far as anyone knew. He was a model citizen who had everything to live for. The police were baffled by the seemingly motiveless murder of Henry Lane. They had no leads, no suspects, no witnesses. Just a dead body, a bullet, and a broken window. They had a mystery that defied explanation and a case that would haunt them until it was solved. As the police searched for clues and motives in the murder of Henry Lane, they turned their attention to his wife, Audrey Lane. Audrey, a 52-year-old homemaker and mother of 3, had been married to Henry for 30 years. Audrey had supported Henry's career while raising their 3 children who had all followed in their father's footsteps and attended Ivy League colleges. Audrey and Henry seemed to have a happy and stable marriage with no signs of trouble or infidelity. Audrey had an alibi for the morning of the murder. She had been in Boston visiting her sister, who had recently undergone surgery for cancer. She had flown back to Chapel Hill on the same day, taking a taxi from the airport to her house. She had found Henry's body in his home office and had immediately called 911. She had been hysterical and inconsolable, according to the first responders. She had cooperated with the police and had given them access to her phone, laptop, and bank accounts. She had nothing to hide, she had said. But the police had a nagging suspicion that Audrey was not telling the whole truth. They had learned that Henry had a life insurance policy worth $1 million and that Audrey was the sole beneficiary. They had also discovered that Audrey had secretly taken out a second mortgage on their house without Henry's knowledge. She had accumulated a large debt due to her addiction to online gambling. She'd been playing poker and slots on various websites, such as PokerStars and Full Tilt Poker, using fake names and credit cards. She had lost thousands of dollars and had been unable to pay back her loans. She had been desperate for money, a way out of her financial troubles. The police confronted Audrey with their findings and asked her to take a polygraph test. Audrey agreed, but failed the test miserably. She had lied about her gambling problem and her debt. Audrey Lalaine, the seemingly devoted wife and mother, had turned out to be a troubled addict. She had shocked and devastated her family, friends, and community. She can become the prime suspect in the case of Henry Lalaine's murder. The police were puzzled by the murder of Henry Lalaine, a successful and respected CFO of a large insurance company in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. They had only a dead body, a bullet, a broken window, and a mystery that seemed unsolvable. But then a breakthrough. The police discovered a hidden folder on Henry's computer, containing a trove of emails, photos, and documents. The folder revealed a shocking secret. Henry had another wife, whom he had married 10 years ago and whom he had kept hidden from his first wife, Audrey. The other wife was Jill Miller Lalaine, a 51-year-old manager of a kindergarten in Raleigh, a city about 30 miles away from Chapel Hill. The police tracked down Jill and confronted her with their findings. Jill was shocked and devastated, not only by Henry's death, but also by his deception. She had no idea that he had another wife and family, who he had never mentioned to her. She had believed that he was divorced and that she was his only wife. She had trusted him and loved him and had no reason to doubt him. She had no involvement in his murder, she swore. According to Jill, she had met Henry online on a dating website called Harmony, where they had both lied about their marital status. They had fallen in love and had eloped in Las Vegas. Without telling anyone, they had rented an apartment in Raleigh where they had lived together on weekends, while Henry worked in Chapel Hill during the week. Jill had 2 children from a previous marriage, whom Henry had treated as his own. He had paid for their education, their hobbies, and their vacations. He had been a loving husband and a caring stepfather, according to Jill. The police interrogated Jill and searched her apartment. They found no evidence of foul play or any connection to the killer. They also verified her alibi for the morning of the murder. She had been at work at the kindergarten, where she had several witnesses. She had a clean record and no criminal history. She had no motive or means to kill Henry. Jill Miller Lalaine, the second wife of Henry Lalaine, had turned out to be an innocent victim of his lies. She had been duped and betrayed by the man she loved, who had led a double life. She had shocked and confused the investigators, who had to look elsewhere for answers. She had added a new twist to the case of Henry Lalaine's murder. As the investigation into Henry Lalaine's murder continued, the police uncovered another shocking revelation. Henry had a third wife, Tonya Sanchez, a 22-year-old nursing student at the University of North Carolina. Tonya and Henry had met at a Starbucks near the campus in September 2008 and had a whirlwind romance. Henry proposed to Tonya in December, and they eloped to Las Vegas on New Year's Eve. Tonya was blissfully unaware of Henry's other marriages and believed she was his one and only love. According to her, she had lived in a small apartment, while Henry had visited her sporadically, telling her he was busy with work. Tonya had believed that Henry was divorced and that she was his only wife. She had also believed that he was wealthy and that she would inherit his fortune. The police interrogated Tonya at the Chapel Hill Police Department. They asked her about her relationship with Henry, her whereabouts on the day of the murder, and her knowledge of Henry's finances. Tonya was visibly shaken and emotional during the questioning. She insisted that she loved Henry and had nothing to do with his death. She said she had been at school, attending a biology class, where she had several witnesses. She said she had no clue about Henry's other wives or his money. She said she was shocked and devastated by the news. The police checked Tonya's alibi and found it to be true. They also searched her apartment and found no evidence of any involvement in the murder. They could not find any connection between Tonya and the killer. Tonya was released from custody, but remained under suspicion. The police wondered if Tonya was telling the truth or if she was a clever liar who had orchestrated a perfect crime. The case of Henry Lelane's murder took a surprising twist when the police uncovered a shocking secret on Tonya Sanchez's phone. Tonya, a 22-year-old student at the University of North Carolina, was Henry's third and youngest wife. She had eloped with him to Las Vegas on New Year's Eve, unaware of his other marriages. But Tonya was not the faithful spouse she claimed to be. She was cheating on Henry with another man. The police found a series of sexually explicit text messages between Tonya and a lover. The lover was Danny Volton, a 23-year-old college student and Tonya's classmate. The messages revealed that Tonya and Danny had been having a passionate affair since November 2008 when they met at a local gym. The messages also showed that Tonya and Danny had a plan to get rid of Henry and run away with his money. One of the messages, dated January 15, 2009, read, "Babe, I can't wait to be with you. Just a few more days and we'll be free. Henry is leaving for a business trip tomorrow. He'll be gone for a week. This is our chance. We have to do it now." Another message, dated January 16, 2009, read, "I love you, Tonya. I'm ready to do this. I have a gun. I'll be at your place tonight. We'll make it look like a robbery. No one will suspect us. Trust me, baby. We'll be rich and happy." The police were stunned by this discovery. They realized that Tonya and Danny were the prime suspects in Henry's murder. They had conspired to kill him and make it look like a break-in. They had hoped to cash in on his life insurance policy and his estate, and had underestimated the police's ability to trace their phone records and expose their plot. The case of Henry Lelane's murder was about to take a dramatic turn. The police had uncovered a shocking secret on Tonya Sanchez's phone. She was having an affair with another man, and they had planned to kill Henry for his money. But who was this man, and how did he execute the murder? The police traced the phone number of Tonya's lover and identified him as Danny Volton, a 23-year-old UNC student. Danny was a handsome and charming young man who had met Tonya in November 2008 when they met at a local gym. They had hit it off instantly and soon began a passionate affair. Danny was also a greedy and ruthless schemer who had learned about Henry's wealth and decided to get his hands on it. He had also manipulated Tonya with love of lies and greed. Danny had convinced Tonya to marry Henry, telling her it was the only way to secure his fortune. He had also persuaded Tonya to help him kill Henry and claim his money. He had told her that Henry was cheating on her and that he deserved to die. He had also told her that he loved her and that they would run away together after the murder. On January 19, 2009, Danny put the plan into action. He drove to Henry's house in Chapel Hill, armed with a gun he had bought online. He found Henry in his home office, working on his computer. He shot him once in the chest, killing him instantly. Then he left the scene, making sure to leave no traces behind. Afterwards, he called Tonya and told her it was done. They celebrated their success and looked forward to their wealthy future together. But their future was short-lived. The police traced Danny's phone and found him at his dorm room. They arrested him and searched his room. They found the 9mm handgun that had killed Henry, hidden under his bed. They also found a plane ticket to Colombia, booked for the next day. Danny had planned to escape with Tonya after killing Henry, but his plan had failed and he had been caught. The police had solved the case of Henry Lelane's murder, but the victim's family was left with a bitter taste. They had learned that Henry had betrayed them with his bigamy, and that he had been killed by his greedy and unfaithful wife and her lover. They felt a mix of relief and anguish as they tried to cope with the loss of their father and husband. The case of Henry Lelane's murder reached its climax in the courtroom. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Isabel Meters, a seasoned and respected lawyer, built a strong case against Danny Volton, the 23-year-old UNC student who had killed Henry for his money. Mears presented the evidence of Danny's affair with Tonya Sanchez, Henry's bigamous third wife, and their plan to murder him and inherit his fortune. Mears also showed the jury the sexually explicit text messages between Danny and Tonya, which revealed their motive and their method. Mears argued that Danny was a cold-blooded and greedy killer who had no remorse for his actions. The defense, represented by Stephen McPherson, a renowned and aggressive attorney, tried to cast doubt on the prosecution's case. McPherson challenged the validity of the phone records, claiming they could have been tampered with. McPherson also suggested that Tonya was the real mastermind behind the murder and that Danny was a knave and manipulated lover who had been coerced into killing Henry. McPherson appealed to the jury's sympathy, portraying Danny as a young and impressionable man who had made a terrible mistake. The trial lasted for 2 weeks and was closely followed by the public. The victim's family attended every day of the trial, hoping for justice. They had to endure the painful details of Henry's death and the shocking revelations of his bigamy. They also had to face the accused killer, who showed no signs of remorse or guilt. The jury deliberated for 3 hours and returned with a verdict of guilty. Danny Volton was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge said that Danny had committed a heinous and premeditated crime and that he deserved the maximum penalty. The victim's family felt a sense of relief and closure as they saw Danny being escorted out of the courtroom. They also felt a mix of anguish and confusion as they tried to make sense of Henry's life and death. The case of Henry Lalaine's murder had a profound impact on the lives of all those involved, especially his wife and family, his mistress and accomplice, and his victim's family. Audrey Lalaine, Henry's first and legal wife, who had been married to him for 30 years, tried to cope with the grief and the shock of learning about his double life. She sought comfort in her children, who had also been devastated by their father's death and deception. She also sought counseling for her gambling addiction and joined a support group for widows. She hoped to find peace and forgiveness and to move on with her life. Jill Miller Lalaine, Henry's second wife, who had been married to him for 10 years, also struggled to deal with the pain and the anger of being lied to and cheated on. She focused on her children, who had lost their stepfather, who they had loved and respected. She also focused on her work as the manager of a kindergarten in Raleigh, where she found joy and purpose in helping young children. She hoped to heal and to find love again and to put the past behind her. Tonya Sanchez, Henry's third and youngest wife, who had been married to him for 6 months, faced the consequences of her actions and her choices. She had been an accomplice to murder and had betrayed and killed the man she had married. She had also been betrayed and used by her lover, Danny Volton, who had manipulated her into helping to kill Henry. She returned to her home country of Colombia without a degree from UNC. She had only regret and remorse and the knowledge that she had wasted her life. The community, which had been shocked and saddened by the murder, tried to recover and to learn from the tragedy. They realized that appearances can be deceiving and that people can have dark and hidden sides. They also realized that greed and lust can lead to violence and death. They hoped to find wisdom and compassion and to prevent such crimes from happening again. And so ends another chapter in the true crime case files. The chilling case of Henry Lalaine's murder serves as a reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly idyllic lives. Join us next time as we delve into another perplexing criminal mystery. Jenny Smith Brosley, a vibrant 32-year-old kindergarten teacher, resided in the peaceful city of Rochester, New York, during the fateful summer of 1993. She was known throughout the community for her cheerful disposition and unwavering kindness. Her dedication to educating young minds and spreading joy was unparalleled. Outside of the classroom, Jenny selflessly volunteered at the local animal shelter, showcasing her love for all creatures great and small. Her compassion and empathy extended to every living being she encountered. Jenny's friends adored her homemade cookies, which had become legendary for their deliciousness. They were often the highlight of community bake sales and gatherings. August of 1993 was a time of excitement and anticipation in Rochester. The city was buzzing with the upcoming Lilac Festival, an annual event that celebrated the blooming of the beautiful lilac flowers. Locals and tourists alike eagerly awaited the festivities, which promised a vibrant atmosphere filled with music, food, and art. Jenny, too, eagerly anticipated the festival. She had planned to take her kindergarten class on a field trip to Highland Park, where the festival was held. The children were excited to explore the colorful gardens and enjoy the various activities planned for them. Unfortunately, The joyous anticipation surrounding the Lilac Festival would soon be overshadowed by a devastating tragedy. On the morning of August 15th, Jenny Smith Brosley was found lifeless in her home, her vibrant spirit extinguished in a brutal act of violence. On a sweltering summer day in August 1993, tragedy befell the peaceful city of Rochester, New York. The community was left in shock and sorrow when the lifeless body of Jenny Smith Brosley, a beloved 32-year-old kindergarten teacher, was discovered in her own home. The discovery of Jenny's body was made by her sister, Sarah Canister, who had stopped by for a visit. Little did Sarah know that she would stumble upon a scene of unimaginable horror. As she entered Jenny's home, a wave of unease washed over her, sensing that something was terribly wrong. The air inside the house was thick with an oppressive stillness, broken only by the distant hum of a fan struggling to combat the relentless heat. The scent of freshly baked cookies, once a comforting aroma synonymous with Jenny's presence, hung in the air, now tainted by an underlying sense of dread. Sarah's heart sank as she reached the living room, where Jenny's lifeless body lay sprawled on the floor. Her once vibrant friend now appeared pale and lifeless, her eyes vacant and devoid of the spark that had always defined her. It was a sight that would forever haunt Sarah's memory. Overwhelmed by grief and shock, Sarah's trembling hands fumbled for the kitchen phone. She dialed the emergency number with trembling fingers, her voice quivering as she relayed the devastating news to the authorities. The sound of sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. As the gravity of the situation began to unfold, news of Jenny's tragic demise spread like wildfire through the close-knit community of Rochester. The local newspaper, the Rochester Times, wasted no time in reporting the shocking incident. Local television news crews descended upon the scene, their cameras capturing the somber atmosphere that now enveloped Jenny's once vibrant neighborhood. As investigators meticulously combed through the evidence, the community remained on edge, grappling with a sense of fear and uncertainty. Who could have committed such a heinous act against a woman known for her unwavering kindness and selflessness? The answers remained elusive, leaving a city in mourning and a void that could never be filled. The Rochester Police Department wasted no time in launching a full-scale investigation into the tragic death of Jenny Smith Brosley, the beloved kindergarten teacher whose life was cut short in a heinous crime. Leading the investigation were husband and wife detective duo Joseph and Lisa Anderson, known for their relentless pursuit of justice. Arriving at the crime scene, located in the quiet suburban neighborhood of Rochester, the detectives were met with a sense of unease. The warm August air hung heavy with anticipation as they approached the modest two-story house where Jenny's lifeless body had been found. With a keen eye for detail, Detective Joseph Anderson meticulously surveyed the exterior of the house. The neatly manicured lawn, adorned with vibrant flowers, stood in stark contrast to the grim reality that awaited them inside. The front door, a sturdy oak structure, showed no signs of forced entry, leaving the detectives puzzled as to how the killer gained access to the home. As they stepped into the house, a wave of silence enveloped them. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding, as if the walls themselves held the secrets to Jenny's untimely demise. The detectives were careful not to disturb any potential evidence as they made their way through the meticulously organized rooms. In the kitchen, Lisa Anderson's sharp eyes were drawn to a batch of freshly baked cookies sitting on the counter. The aroma of chocolate chips filled the room, a bittersweet reminder of the joy Jenny had brought to her students and friends. But beneath the surface of that innocent scene, a sinister truth awaited discovery. With gloved hands, Lisa carefully collected samples of the cookies, suspecting that they held the key to unraveling the mystery. The cookies were sent to the crime lab for analysis, where experts would determine if they contained traces of the lethal poison, cyanide. The meticulous work of the Anderson detectives would prove crucial in uncovering the truth behind Jenny's tragic end. With each passing day, they delved deeper into the web of deceit, determined to bring the perpetrator to justice and provide closure to a grieving community. The initial suspect in the investigation of Jenny Smith Brosley's tragic murder was none other than her estranged husband, Mark H. Smith. At 35 years old, Mark worked as an engineer for the renowned photography company, Kodak, a name that resonated with many in August of 1993. Known for his reserved nature and occasional outbursts of anger, Mark was taken into custody for questioning as the police sought to uncover any possible motive for his wife's untimely demise. As the investigation unfolded, the police delved into the couple's relationship, peeling back the layers of their troubled marriage. Neighbors recounted hearing heated arguments emanating from the Smith-Brosley residence, raising suspicions about the state of their union. Friends and colleagues were interviewed, shedding light on the couple's tumultuous history, which included allegations of infidelity and financial strain. Detectives Joseph and Lisa Anderson, a husband and wife team known for their tenacity and attention to detail, meticulously combed through Mark's personal and professional life. They scoured his workplace, questioning colleagues and superiors, hoping to unearth any clues that could connect him to the crime. The Kodak campus, a bustling hive of activity, was abuzz with speculation as news of the investigation spread like wildfire. Meanwhile, the media circus surrounding the case reached a fever pitch. Local newspapers, such as the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, dedicated column inches to dissecting the details of the crime. Television news stations, like WHEC-TV, aired dramatic reenactments of the discovery of Jenny's lifeless body, captivating audiences across the city. The community was gripped by fear and intrigue as they anxiously awaited answers to the burning question: who could have committed such a heinous act? As the investigation into Mark H. Smith continued, the police meticulously examined his alibi for the day of the murder. They interviewed co-workers, cross-referenced time cards, and scrutinized surveillance footage from nearby establishments. Despite their best efforts, no concrete evidence linking Mark to the crime could be found. His calm demeanor during questioning, although occasionally punctuated by moments of frustration, further muddled the waters of suspicion. With no smoking gun, the police were forced to widen their net and explore other leads. As the investigation took unexpected twists and turns, the truth seemed to slip further out of their grasp. The clock was ticking, and the pressure to solve the case intensified with each passing day. As the investigation into the tragic murder of Jenny Smith-Brosley unfolded, the spotlight turned towards her younger sister, Sarah Canister. Sarah, a stay-at-home mom residing in the quiet city of Rochester, New York, found herself at the center of a web of suspicion. Behind Sarah's seemingly vivacious personality and quick wit, a darker side emerged. The investigators began to uncover a deep-seated jealousy that Sarah harbored towards her accomplished sister. Jenny's success as a beloved kindergarten teacher and her ability to effortlessly spread joy seemed to cast a shadow over Sarah's own life. Sarah's envy was not a well-kept secret among family and friends. She had often expressed her frustration at feeling overshadowed by Jenny's achievements. As the investigators delved deeper into Sarah's past, they discovered a pattern of attention-seeking behavior. Sarah had been known to orchestrate elaborate schemes to gain the recognition she so desperately craved. The police interrogated Sarah, carefully navigating the delicate balance between empathy and suspicion. They sought to unravel the tangled threads of her hidden motives. Sarah's charm and ability to manipulate others made the task all the more challenging. She skillfully evaded direct questions, leaving the investigators with more questions than answers. With each passing day, the web of suspicion around Sarah grew tighter. The investigators tirelessly pursued every lead, meticulously analyzing phone records, financial transactions, and witness testimonies. They sought to piece together the puzzle that would bring justice to Jenny's memory. In a significant breakthrough in the investigation into the tragic murder of beloved kindergarten teacher Jenny Smith-Brosley, the police stumbled upon a hidden diary that may have held the key to unraveling the mystery. The shocking discovery of this diary, belonging to Jenny's younger sister, Sarah Canister, shed new light on the case and exposed a web of envy and resentment. On a cloudy day in late August 1993, while combing through Sarah's belongings, the investigators stumbled upon a dusty old diary tucked away in a forgotten corner of her closet. As they leafed through its pages, they were confronted with a chilling account of Sarah's deep-seated jealousy towards her sister. The diary revealed Sarah's feelings of being overshadowed by Jenny's achievements and her desperate longing for attention. The diary entries painted a vivid picture of Sarah's inner turmoil. She expressed her envy towards Jenny's popularity, her success as a teacher, and her renowned homemade cookies. Sarah's words dripped with bitterness and resentment, revealing a side of her that had remained hidden from those closest to her. The investigators were taken aback by the depth of Sarah's emotions and the lengths she was willing to go to gain the spotlight. They meticulously analyzed the diary, scrutinizing every word for clues that could link Sarah to Jenny's untimely demise. The entries hinted at a brewing storm of anger and frustration, creating a motive that the investigators had been desperately searching for. With this newfound evidence, the investigators were determined to delve deeper into Sarah's psyche, seeking to understand the extent of her resentment and whether it had driven her to commit such a heinous act. They planned to interview friends and acquaintances, hoping to uncover any additional information that could corroborate the diary's revelations. The diary had become a crucial piece in the puzzle, providing a glimpse into the mind of a potential killer. The investigators were now faced with the daunting task of connecting the dots and bringing justice to Jenny's grieving family. In the midst of the investigation into the tragic murder of Jenny Smith Brosley, a new suspect emerged from the shadows. Dr. Edward Bleach, a well-respected family physician, found himself under the scrutinizing gaze of law enforcement. The police, driven by an insatiable thirst for justice, sought to uncover the truth behind this heinous crime. Dr. Bleach, known for his medical expertise and dedication to his profession, had long been a pillar of the community. However, as the detectives delved deeper into his past, a different side of the doctor began to emerge. It was discovered that the Smith family, whom he had treated in the past, had sued Dr. Bleach for malpractice, alleging that his negligence had resulted in the blinding of several family members. This lawsuit had left a deep-seated grudge within the doctor's heart, a smoldering fire of resentment that could potentially drive him to commit a horrific act. As the investigators questioned Dr. Bleach, they unearthed a trove of unsettling details. The doctor's alibi for the day of Jenny's murder was flimsy at best, with no concrete evidence to support his claims. Furthermore, witnesses reported seeing him in the vicinity of Jenny's residence on that fateful day. The police painstakingly cross-referenced phone records, credit card statements, and surveillance footage, building a compelling case against the doctor. To further complicate matters, a series of anonymous letters had been sent to local news outlets, hinting at Dr. Bleach's involvement in the crime. These letters, postmarked from various cities across the country, contained chilling details that only someone intimately familiar with the case could know. The police, in collaboration with the FBI, analyzed the handwriting and linguistic patterns of the letters, hoping to find a clue that would lead them closer to the truth. As the investigation unfolded, the media circus surrounding the case intensified. The airwaves crackled with discussions on talk radio shows, as armchair detectives offered their own theories and opinions. The city of Rochester, usually known for its serene beauty and picturesque landscapes, was now gripped by a sense of unease and fear. As the summer of 1993 drew to a close, the investigation into the murder of Jenny Smith Brosley took an unexpected turn. The police, armed with mounting evidence and a growing sense of urgency, were closing in on their suspect. But would Dr. Edward Bleach's calm demeanor crack under the weight of their relentless pursuit? Only time would tell. After an exhaustive investigation, law enforcement officials finally cracked the case surrounding the tragic murder of beloved kindergarten teacher Jenny Smith Brosley. The shocking revelation left the community of Rochester, New York, in a state of disbelief and mourning. The perpetrator of this heinous crime was identified as none other than Jenny's own sister, Sarah Canister. The motive behind this unimaginable act appeared to be a toxic combination of sexual jealousy and deep-rooted resentment towards her successful sibling. As the investigation unfolded, detectives stumbled upon a hidden diary belonging to Sarah. This diary, filled with disturbing entries, detailed her envy and bitterness towards Jenny's accomplishments. It provided a chilling glimpse into Sarah's troubled psyche and shed light on her sinister intentions. The plot thickened when evidence emerged that Sarah had seduced Jenny's estranged husband, Mark H. Smith, in an attempt to use her sexuality to manipulate him into aiding her in the murder. Mark, vulnerable and susceptible to Sarah's advances, became an unwitting pawn in this twisted game of deceit and betrayal. The police, armed with irrefutable evidence, swiftly apprehended Sarah. Her arrest sent shockwaves through the community, as the true extent of her malevolence was laid bare for all to see. The once vibrant and vivacious Sarah had been harboring a dark secret, hidden beneath a facade of charm and wit. The revelation of Sarah's guilt left the victim's family shattered. Struggling to come to terms with the shocking betrayal, friends and loved ones of Jenny Smith Brosley have expressed their disbelief, grappling with the fact that someone so close to her could be capable of such a heinous act. The trial that followed the shocking revelation of Sarah Canister as Jenny Smith Brosley's murderer was filled with intense emotions and gripping courtroom drama. The trial took place in the historic Monroe County Courthouse, a grand building that had witnessed countless legal battles over the years. The courtroom was packed with reporters from local newspapers such as the Democrat and Chronicle, as well as television crews from stations like WROC-TV. The eyes of the nation were on Rochester as this high-profile case unfolded. District Attorney Emily Sullivan, a seasoned prosecutor known for her tenacity's case, was built on a mountain of evidence, including the damning diary entries found in Sarah's possession. These entries, written in Sarah's own hand, revealed her deep-seated jealousy and resentment towards her sister. The jury listened intently as the prosecution meticulously dissected each entry, painting a vivid picture of Sarah's motive and her calculated plan to eliminate her sister. To counter the prosecution's case, Sarah's defense attorney, Jacqueline Humbert, employed a range of tactics. Humbert called into question the reliability of the diary entries, arguing that they could have been fabricated or misinterpreted. She also attempted to cast doubt on the credibility of the witnesses, highlighting inconsistencies in their testimonies. After days of deliberation, the jury reached a unanimous verdict. Sarah Canister was found guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom erupted in a mix of relief and sorrow. The victim's family, though relieved that justice had been served, could not escape the pain of their loss. Sarah, now convicted of this heinous crime, was led away in handcuffs, her face a mask of disbelief. The sentencing phase of the trial followed shortly after. In the end, the judge delivered his sentence: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The courtroom fell silent as the weight of the sentence sank in. Sarah, now condemned to spend the rest of her days behind bars, was led away, her fate sealed. As the trial concluded, the impact of this tragic case reverberated through the lives of the victim's friends and family. They were left to grapple with the shocking betrayal and the loss of a beloved sister and friend. The trial also left a lasting impression on the community, reminding them of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most seemingly ordinary lives. In the aftermath of the highly publicized trial that captivated the nation, the lives of all those involved took divergent paths. Mark H. Smith, the grief-stricken widower, sought solace in therapy and support groups, desperately trying to navigate the treacherous journey of healing. Haunted by guilt and plagued by the memories of his beloved wife, Mark found comfort in the warm embrace of his family and friends. Meanwhile, Sarah Canister, the convicted murderer, began her life sentence in a maximum security prison. Stripped of her freedom and facing the harsh reality of her actions, Sarah was left to confront the consequences of her heinous crime. Behind bars, she faced a long and arduous road towards redemption, with little hope of ever regaining the trust of those she had betrayed. The dedicated police investigators, Joseph and Lisa Anderson, continued their tireless pursuit of justice in other cases. Driven by a deep sense of duty and a burning desire to protect their community, they tirelessly worked to bring closure to other victims and their families. Their commitment to upholding the law and ensuring the safety of their fellow citizens remained unwavering. August of 1993 will forever be etched in the collective memory of the community as they grappled with the shocking betrayal and the profound impact it had on their lives. The trial had dominated headlines, capturing the attention of the nation and leaving an indelible mark on the city of Rochester. As we conclude this episode of True Crime Case Files, we are reminded of the darkness that can lurk behind closed doors. The tragic tale of Jenny Smith Brosley serves as a cautionary reminder of the depths to which jealousy and resentment can drive a person. Through the tireless efforts of law enforcement and the resilience of the victim's loved ones, justice was ultimately served. Daniel "Danny" Miller, a 45-year-old high school history teacher, was known for his engaging storytelling and unwavering dedication to his students. Residing in Springfield, Missouri, Daniel led a seemingly ordinary life. Beyond his profession, he found solace in his passion for gardening and cherished his role as a devoted father to his 2 children. His amicable nature endeared him to the community, but beneath the surface, rumors swirled about his wife's infidelities, casting a shadow over his personal life. In October 2009, the town of Springfield was abuzz with excitement as the annual Harvest Festival drew near. The streets were adorned with colorful leaves, and the crisp autumn air carried the scent of pumpkin spice. Families flocked to the local pumpkin patch to pick the perfect pumpkins for carving, while children eagerly awaited the haunted hayrides and corn mazes. Daniel Miller, being an avid gardener, was particularly fond of this time of year. He would spend his weekends tending to his lush backyard garden, carefully tilling the soil and nurturing his vibrant collection of flowers and vegetables. His garden was a sanctuary, a place where he could escape the stress of his teaching job and find solace in nature's beauty. Despite his seemingly idyllic life, whispers of trouble had begun to circulate through the town. It was rumored that Daniel's wife, Linda, had been seen in the company of other men. Gossip spread like wildfire, fueled by the small-town grapevine and the insatiable hunger for scandalous tales, and Linda soon became known as the town harlot. As the days grew shorter and the nights grew colder, tensions mounted within the Miller household. The once happy couple found themselves entangled in a web of suspicion and mistrust. Friends and neighbors noticed the strain in their relationship, but no one could have predicted the tragic turn of events that would soon unfold. In the quiet town of Springfield, Missouri, a shocking event unfolded that would send ripples through the community. On the fateful day of October 28, 2009, the sun began to set, casting an eerie glow over the neighborhood. The air was heavy with anticipation, as if the universe itself sensed something was amiss. It was Linda Miller, wife of the beloved high school history teacher Daniel Miller, who made the chilling discovery. As she entered their home, a sense of unease settled upon her. Little did she know that her life was about to be forever changed. Linda's footsteps echoed through the hallway as she made her way towards the bathroom. The door creaked open, revealing a sight that would haunt her dreams for years to come. There, sitting on the toilet, was the lifeless body of her husband, Daniel. A gasp escaped Linda's lips as she stumbled backward, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. How could this happen? Questions flooded her mind, but the answers remained elusive. The room was frozen in time, as if the walls themselves held their breath. The silence was deafening, broken only by Linda's anguished sobs. She reached for her phone, trembling fingers dialing the emergency number. The authorities needed to be notified, and quickly. As Linda waited for help to arrive, her mind raced with memories of happier times. She recalled Daniel's infectious laughter and his dedication to his students. How could someone so full of life meet such a tragic end? News of Daniel Miller's death spread like wildfire throughout the town. The local media buzzed with speculation, eager to uncover the truth behind this mysterious incident. Reporters from the Springfield Gazette and the Evening News arrived at the scene, cameras flashing and microphones poised. Detectives from the Springfield Police Department meticulously combed through the bathroom for any clues that could shed light on what had transpired. The room was meticulously analyzed, from the toothpaste brand on the sink to the magazines scattered on the floor. Every detail mattered in their quest for justice. As the investigation unfolded, the town of Springfield held its breath, anxiously awaiting answers. Who would want to harm Daniel Miller, a man loved and respected by all? And what secrets lay hidden beneath the surface of this seemingly idyllic community? The police officers arrived at the scene with a sense of urgency, ready to uncover the truth behind the untimely demise of Daniel Miller. Leading the investigation was Detective Huey "Ducky" Hughes, a seasoned investigator known for his sharp instincts and attention to detail. Together with his team, they meticulously combed through the crime scene, leaving no stone unturned in their quest for justice. As they entered the bathroom, the officers were met with a chilling sight. The room, once a place of privacy and solace, had been transformed into a macabre scene of death. Bloodstains and a copious amount of blood stained the toilet, indicating violent, bloody, and ultimately fatal diarrhea, a stark contrast to the otherwise pristine surroundings. The officers carefully documented each bloodstain, taking photographs and making detailed notes, ensuring that no piece of evidence went unnoticed. The weapon used in this heinous crime was a lethal dose of antifreeze, cunningly mixed into Daniel's favorite evening drink, sweet iced tea. The investigators found the empty bottle of antifreeze in the kitchen, discarded among other household cleaning supplies. They meticulously collected fingerprints and DNA samples from the bottle, hoping to find a match that would lead them to the perpetrator. As they continued their search for clues, the investigators discovered a torn piece of paper on the bathroom floor. It appeared to be a note, but the words were barely legible. With the help of forensic experts, they carefully pieced together the torn fragments, revealing a cryptic message. The note mentioned a meeting with a divorce lawyer, scheduled for the day of the crime. This discovery sparked a new lead, and the investigators wasted no time in following it up. The investigation into the murder of Daniel Miller was a complex puzzle, with each piece of evidence leading the detectives closer to the truth. The meticulousness and determination of Detective Huey "Ducky" Hughes and his team would prove crucial in solving this chilling crime. In the small town of Springfield, Missouri, back in October of 2009, a shocking crime took place that left the community in disbelief. The victim, Daniel Miller, was a well-liked high school history teacher known for his captivating storytelling and dedication to his students. But behind the facade of a seemingly ordinary life, dark secrets lurked, and it was his wife, Linda Miller, who found herself at the center of the investigation. Linda, a 42-year-old ambitious real estate agent, had always been known for her charm and persuasive skills. Her career had taken off, but unfortunately, her commitment to her family had suffered as a result. Tensions had been building in the Miller household, exacerbated by Linda's habit of serving microwave meals that Daniel despised. The couple's relationship had already been strained by rumors of Linda's extramarital affairs, which had spread like wildfire through the tight-knit community. During the investigation, Linda dropped a bombshell revelation that sent shockwaves through the town. She claimed that Daniel had been having sex with his best friend, Tom Richards. This revelation added another layer of complexity to the case, leaving the police puzzled and questioning the depths of Linda's involvement. The police interrogated Linda, observing her every move and change in demeanor. At times, she appeared angry, lashing out at the investigators with frustration. Other times, she seemed calm and composed, as if she had nothing to hide. But there was something else, an underlying emotion that flickered in her eyes, leaving the investigators curious about what secrets she might be concealing. The media frenzy surrounding the case grew, with local newspapers and television stations covering every twist and turn. The town of Springfield, usually known for its blandly peaceful atmosphere, was now gripped by fear and suspicion. People whispered in hushed tones, speculating about who could be responsible for such a heinous act. As the days turned into weeks, the town of Springfield held its breath, waiting for answers. The investigation into the murder of Daniel Miller had taken a dramatic turn, and the focus now shifted to Linda Miller, the woman at the center of it all. Tom Richards, a 55-year-old mechanic with a rugged and charismatic demeanor, became the next person of interest in the investigation into the tragic demise of Danny Miller. As Daniel's best friend, Tom's connection to the victim raised eyebrows and suspicions among the investigators. The police delved into Tom's background, meticulously examining his every move and interaction with Daniel and Linda Miller. Tom vehemently denied any sexual involvement with Daniel, but he did admit to a tumultuous relationship with the victim. The detectives focused on the moments leading up to Daniel's death, searching for any clues that could shed light on the truth. They delved into their friendship, peeling back the layers of their bond to uncover any hidden tensions or unresolved conflicts. During the investigation, Tom's reactions ranged from anger to calmness, leaving the detectives perplexed. They carefully observed his every word and gesture, searching for any signs of guilt or deception. The investigators knew that the truth often lurked in the unspoken secrets and hidden emotions that lay beneath the surface. As the detectives dug deeper, they discovered that Tom and Linda Miller had a history of confrontations. These incidents added fuel to the fire of suspicion surrounding Tom. The investigators wondered if these conflicts had escalated to a point where Tom would seek revenge against his best friend, or if Linda was trying to blackmail her enemy. The police also explored Tom's alibi for the time of Daniel's death. They meticulously pieced together his movements, cross-referencing them with witness testimonies and surveillance footage from local establishments. The investigators left no stone unturned, determined to uncover the truth behind Daniel's tragic demise. As the investigation into Tom Richards continued, the detectives found themselves entangled in a web of secrets and lies. They knew that the truth was out there, waiting to be unraveled. But would they be able to piece together the puzzle and bring justice to Daniel Miller? In the midst of the investigation into the tragic demise of Danny Miller, the police made a crucial breakthrough. It was a cold, early November day when snow, early for the season, began to fall, adding to the tension that gripped the investigators and the community. The discovery of this new evidence found hidden in the woods outside Springfield offered a glimmer of hope in uncovering the truth behind the heinous crime. The police painstakingly analyzed the newfound piece of the puzzle, an abandoned hard drive, leaving no stone unturned. They meticulously combed through the evidence, extracting vital information that would propel the investigation forward. The details were shocking and disturbing, shedding light on a dark secret that had been lurking beneath the surface. The evidence revealed that someone had been sexually targeting Danny's class, engaging in sexual activities with over half of the students, both male and female. The sexual encounters took place both inside and outside the school premises, exposing a dark underbelly that had remained hidden from the community's gaze. This revelation sent shockwaves through the community and raised alarming questions about the safety and well-being of the students. The police immediately reached out to the school authorities, who cooperated fully in the investigation. News of the shocking revelation spread like wildfire throughout Springfield, leaving parents and community members in a state of disbelief. The local media, including the Springfield Gazette and the town's radio station, dedicated extensive coverage to the case, urging anyone with information to come forward. The town was gripped with fear and anger, as parents grappled with the unsettling realization that their children had been involved in such salacious acts. As the investigation delved deeper into this disturbing aspect of the case, the police vowed to bring the predator to justice and ensure the safety of the students. They worked tirelessly, aiming to unravel the web of secrets and uncover the identity of the predator who had tarnished the purity of Springfield's teens. In the ongoing investigation into the tragic death of Daniel Miller, a high school history teacher from Springfield, Missouri, the police turned their attention to a surprising new suspect. Laura Day Davis, a senior student known for her empathy and leadership skills, became a person of interest in this puzzling case. Laura, a young woman on the cusp of adulthood, had been an active participant in Daniel's history class, where she displayed a deep admiration for her teacher. However, as the investigation unfolded, shocking revelations came to light about Laura's connection to Linda Miller, Daniel's wife. It appeared that Laura had been involved in a sexual relationship with Linda, a fact that had remained hidden from the community until now. This revelation has raised eyebrows and led investigators to question whether Laura's feelings of jealousy and revenge could have played a role in Daniel's untimely demise. During the police interrogation, Laura's emotions fluctuated, revealing a complex mix of anger, calmness, and something else entirely. The investigators carefully observed her every word and gesture, searching for clues that could shed light on her involvement in this tragic event. As the investigation deepened, it became apparent that Linda Miller had been sexually involved with numerous students in Danny's class, both male and female, in what appeared to be a vengeful act against her husband's perceived infidelity with Tom Richards, Daniel's best friend. This tangled web of relationships and secrets left investigators grappling with the true motives behind Daniel's murder. In November of 2009, the small community of Springfield was gripped by the shocking revelations surrounding the investigation. News outlets, such as the local newspaper the Springfield Gazette, covered the story extensively, leaving residents astounded by the depth of deceit and betrayal that had unfolded within their midst. In November of 2009, the investigation into the brutal murder of Daniel Miller took a shocking turn. The diligent work of the police led them to uncover the true mastermind behind this heinous crime. It was none other than Linda Miller, the wife of the victim. Linda, a 42-year-old ambitious real estate agent, had carefully orchestrated this sinister plot. Motivated by a desire for complete control over their assets and the freedom to continue her illicit relationships, Linda saw Daniel as an obstacle to her happiness and financial independence. She had meticulously planned every detail, ensuring that her involvement remained hidden from prying eyes. With the evidence mounting against her, the police had no choice but to apprehend Linda. On that fateful day, the authorities descended upon her, just as the sun began to set over their quiet suburban neighborhood. The scene was reminiscent of a dramatic movie, with police cars lining the streets and flashing lights illuminating the darkening sky. As Linda was escorted out of her home, the media swarmed around, hungry for the details of this shocking revelation. News cameras captured the moment, broadcasting it to households across the city. Headlines blared with the news of a wife's betrayal and a husband's tragic demise, capturing the attention of a captivated audience. The arrest itself was not without its own drama. Linda's emotions were a whirlwind, as she displayed a range of reactions. Her face, once composed and confident, now contorted with a mix of anger, fear, and disbelief. The media captured every fleeting expression, ensuring that the world witnessed the downfall of a woman who had once seemed so charming and successful. As Linda was led away, the police were left to ponder the depths of her involvement. The investigation had uncovered a web of lies, deceit, and betrayal, leaving the community shaken to its core. The small town of Springfield, Missouri, would forever be marked by this tragic event. In November of 2009, the courtroom became the center stage for justice as the trial of Linda Miller, the accused murderer of Daniel Miller, unfolded. The trial was a gripping spectacle that captivated the nation's attention. People from all walks of life tuned in to watch the proceedings, eager to see if justice would prevail. The prosecution, led by seasoned lawyer J. Roy, meticulously presented their case against Linda. They called numerous witnesses, including detectives, forensic experts, and even Daniel's close friends, who testified about Linda's troubled marriage and her alleged extramarital affairs. The evidence against Linda was overwhelming, with the prosecution unveiling phone records, emails, and even surveillance footage that painted a damning picture of her involvement in the crime. On the other side of the courtroom, defense attorney Sarah Claxon Roberts fought fiercely to protect her client's interests. She argued that the evidence presented by the prosecution was circumstantial and failed to prove Linda's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Claxon Roberts attempted to cast doubt on the credibility of the witnesses and questioned the validity of the forensic evidence. The trial lasted for several weeks, with both sides presenting their closing arguments to the jury. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as the jurors deliberated over Linda's fate. After hours of careful consideration, the jury reached a unanimous verdict. Linda Miller was found guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom erupted in a mix of emotions, relief for Daniel's family and friends, and shock for Linda and her supporters. The judge, known for his no-nonsense approach, wasted no time in delivering the sentence. Linda was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom fell silent as the weight of the verdict sank in. Linda's fate was sealed, and she would spend the rest of her days behind bars, paying for the heinous crime she committed. As the trial came to a close, the media frenzy surrounding the case slowly subsided. The Miller family, though forever scarred by the tragedy, found solace in the fact that justice had been served. The community of Springfield, Missouri, rallied around them, offering support and condolences during this difficult time. In the end, the trial of Linda Miller served as a stark reminder of the fragility of human relationships and the devastating consequences of betrayal. It was a chapter in history that would forever be etched in the memories of those who lived through it. After the dramatic conclusion of the trial, the lives of those involved took different paths as they tried to find a sense of normalcy in the aftermath of the shocking events. The suspects, the police, and the victim's family all faced the daunting task of rebuilding their lives, forever impacted by the betrayal and tragedy that unfolded. Linda Miller, the mastermind behind the heinous crime, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She was transferred to the Missouri State Penitentiary, a maximum security facility known for housing some of the state's most dangerous criminals. The community, still reeling from the shocking revelations, found some solace in knowing that justice had been served. Detective Huey "Ducky" Hughes and his team, hailed as heroes for their relentless pursuit of the truth, continued their work in the Springfield Police Department. Their dedication and meticulousness in solving Daniel Miller's murder earned them accolades from their superiors and the community. The victim's family, devastated by their loss, sought solace in their memories of Daniel and the support of their friends and neighbors. They held a private memorial service at the Green Lawn Funeral Home, where family and friends gathered to pay their respects. The service was marked by tears, heartfelt eulogies, and a sense of unity among those who loved Daniel. As the years passed, the community slowly healed from the wounds inflicted by the tragedy. Springfield, known for its vibrant community spirit, rallied together to support the Miller family and remember Daniel's legacy as a beloved teacher. The local high school, where Daniel had taught for many years, established a scholarship in his honor, ensuring that his passion for education would live on. As the years went by, the wounds slowly healed, but the memory of Daniel Miller and the tragic events surrounding his murder remained etched in the collective consciousness of the Springfield community. The story served as a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing those we hold dear. And there you have it, the haunting tale of betrayal and murder that unfolded in Springfield, Missouri. The web of secrets, lies, and infidelity tore apart the lives of those involved, leaving an indelible mark on the community. Jenny Braze was a 34-year-old woman who lived in Palm Bay, Florida, with her husband, Arthur. She was a teacher of the local high school, where she was loved by her students and fellow teachers. Jenny had a bachelor's degree in English literature from the University of Florida. She was passionate about reading and always found time to help others improve their reading skills. Jenny was especially known for organizing book clubs and poetry readings in the community. She loved books like To Kill a Mockingbird and Pride and Prejudice and often recommended them to her friends and students. Jenny was also very athletic. She loved running and participated in local marathons. She was often seen jogging in the mornings around Palm Bay's Turkey Creek Sanctuary. She had even completed the Disney World Marathon twice and was training for another marathon when she died. Her love for running kept her fit and healthy, and she encouraged others to join her in her fitness journey. Jenny's family included her husband, Arthur Braze, her parents, Thomas and Karen Mason, from Iowa, and her younger sister, Emily. She was close to her family and often spent weekends with them, having picnics at the local parks or attending church services. Her friends described her as kind-hearted and always willing to lend a helping hand. Jenny was known for her warm smile and friendly nature. She had a way of making everyone feel special and important. In the days before her death, Jenny was busy with her usual activities. She was planning the next book club meeting and was excited about discussing the latest book they had chosen. Her Nights Under the Maid's Moon by the late Joyce Lehman, which was a popular read in 2004. She was also looking forward to participating in the upcoming Palm Bay Fun Run, a local charity event. Jenny had just bought new running shoes from the nearby Sports Authority and was eager to try them out. Jenny's life seemed perfect on the outside, but she had secrets that not many knew about. Jenny dreamed of writing her own book one day and often talked about it with her friends. She wanted to share her love for literature and hoped her book would inspire others. Unfortunately, Jenny's life was cut short before she could fulfill her dreams. On February 18, 2004, Palm Bay, Florida, was covered in a light fog, and the temperature was cool and comfortable. At around 7:30 a.m., Carol Stevens, a 92-year-old retiree and neighbor of Jenny Braze, was walking her dog, Melania Stratanowicz, in Turkey Creek Sanctuary, a popular local park. Carol enjoyed her morning walks and always listened to her favorite radio station, 104.1 FM, which was playing some Backstreet Boys that morning. As Carol walked along the path, she noticed something unusual near a cluster of trees. Melania began to bark and pull on his leash, leading Carol closer to the area. As she got closer, she saw what looked like a person lying on the ground. Her heart raced as she approached the figure and realized it was Jenny Braze. Jenny was lying on her back, her eyes blown out by gunshots, blood surrounding her head. Carol was in shock. She quickly took out her cell phone, a Nokia 3310, and dialed 911, her hands trembling. The operator instructed her to stay on the line and wait for the police and paramedics to arrive. Carol kept glancing at Jenny, unable to believe what she was seeing. Within minutes, the sound of sirens filled the air as the police and paramedics arrived. Officers quickly secured the area, and paramedics confirmed that Jenny was dead. They noticed 2 gunshot wounds, 1 in each eye, and a message written in blood beside her, "I am a cheater." The scene was both shocking and heartbreaking. As the police worked, news of the murder quickly spread through the neighborhood. Local TV stations like LDES2 News and WKNG News 6 began covering the story, and reporters gathered near the park, eager for any information they could get. The discovery of Jenny Braze's body shocked the quiet community of Palm Bay. People who knew Jenny were devastated, unable to comprehend how such a kind and beloved person could meet such a violent end. The police vowed to bring her killer to justice, but the journey to uncover the truth was just beginning. The Palm Bay police arrived swiftly at the scene where Jenny Braze's body was found. It was a foggy morning on February 18, 2004, and the atmosphere was tense. Detectives Carol Harrison and Brielle Honley led the investigation. Detective Harrison, a tall man with graying hair, was known for his sharp attention to detail and calm demeanor. Detective Honley, a younger officer with a knack for empathy, was determined and methodical. The crime scene was disturbing. Jenny's body lay on the damp ground of Turkey Creek Sanctuary, a local park. Blood surrounded her head, and the chilling message, "I am a cheater," was written in her blood next to her. She had been shot twice. Once in each eye at such a close range her eye sockets were blown out, making the scene even more horrifying. As the detectives began their work, the park was quickly cordoned off with yellow police tape. Forensic experts arrived with their equipment, setting up tents and floodlights to illuminate the area. They carefully photographed the scene, ensuring they captured every detail. They collected bullet casings and took samples of the blood message for analysis. The detectives looked for any other clues around the body. They noticed the ground was slightly disturbed, suggesting a struggle. Detective Harrison pointed out a broken branch nearby, which could have been used in the fight. The early morning light added a sense of urgency to their work. They knew time was critical in the early stages of an investigation. The detectives used luminol to check for any blood that might have been cleaned up. They also used metal detectors to search for any hidden evidence. As they worked, they interviewed nearby residents and park visitors who might have seen or heard anything unusual. The autopsy later confirmed that Jenny was shot with a 9mm handgun. The police knew they had to find this weapon to make their case stronger. They also checked security cameras in the area, hoping to catch any suspicious activity. Carol, still shaken, gave a brief statement to the police about how she found Jenny's body. She was visibly upset, her voice quivering as she recounted the morning's events. After her statement, Carol went home, hugging Melania tightly, grateful for his presence but deeply disturbed by what she had witnessed. Detectives Harrison and Homley worked long hours, piecing together the evidence. They were determined to find out who could commit such a brutal crime against someone so beloved in their community. Every detail mattered, and they couldn't afford to miss anything. The investigation was just beginning, and the detectives knew they had a long road ahead. The community of Palm Bay held its breath, waiting for answers and hoping for justice for Jenny Braze. Arthur Braze, Jenny's husband, was the first suspect the police investigated. Arthur was 36 years old and worked at a local pet supply store. He was known to be methodical and logical, with a passion for solving complex problems. His interest in amateur pharmacology, a hobby where he experimented with different chemicals, made the police suspicious. Detectives Carol Harrison and Brielle Homley brought Arthur in for questioning on the evening of February 19, 2004. The interrogation room was quiet and dimly lit, adding to the tension. Arthur appeared calm, but was visibly tired and stressed. He claimed he had been working late on the night of the murder, trying to complete an inventory at the store. Arthur described his marriage to Jenny as generally happy, but admitted they had their struggles. He said he had no idea who could have wanted to harm her. When the detectives asked about Jenny's affairs, Arthur's calm demeanor shifted. He seemed shocked and hurt, insisting he did not know anything about her extramarital relationships. Detectives pressed Arthur on his whereabouts during the critical hours of the murder. Arthur provided an alibi, stating he was at work until 10 p.m. and then went straight home. However, there were no witnesses to confirm his story. His colleagues had left earlier, and there were no security cameras at the store to verify his claims. Arthur's methodical nature came into question. The detectives knew he had a deep understanding of chemistry from his hobby. They wondered if he could have used this knowledge in the murder. However, Arthur maintained his innocence, growing more frustrated with each question. Forensic evidence began to mount against him. The bullets used in the murder were traced back to a 9mm handgun registered in Arthur's name. When asked about the gun, Arthur said it had been stolen from his home months before, but he had not reported it missing. This admission only increased the detectives' suspicions. Throughout the interrogation, Arthur's responses were a mix of calm explanations and visible frustration. He repeatedly denied any involvement in Jenny's murder, but the detectives felt there was more to the story. They knew they needed more evidence to either confirm his guilt or clear his name. As the investigation continued, Arthur remained a prime suspect. The community of Palm Bay watched closely, waiting to see if the quiet, logical husband could really be behind such a brutal crime. The detectives were determined to uncover the truth, knowing that every detail could bring them closer to solving the case. Judy Ann Wharton, Jenny Braze's close friend, was the second suspect the police investigated. Judy Ann, 32, was a metaphysical surgeon and spiritual healer from Los Angeles, something her deeply conservative community found deeply suspicious. She was known for her vibrant and outgoing personality. Always the life of the party, Judy Ann often brought homemade health drinks and snacks to Jenny's home. She believed in holistic living and frequently talked about the benefits of natural remedies. On February 20, 2004, detectives Carol Harrison and Brielle Honley called Judy Ann in for questioning. She arrived dressed in bright, flowing clothes, with a calm and serene demeanor. The detectives asked her about her relationship with Jenny, and Judy Ann admitted they were very close friends. She also confessed that they had a sexual relationship, but insisted it was consensual and loving. Judy Ann's alibi for the night of the murder was that she was hosting a spiritual healing session at her home, attended by several people. She provided the names of the attendees, who later confirmed her story. However, the detectives were still suspicious due to her close relationship with Jenny and access to her home. When questioned about the murder, Judy Ann seemed genuinely shocked and saddened. She described Jenny as a kind and loving person who would never hurt anyone. The detectives asked if she knew about Jenny's other relationships, including the one with David Clark. Judy Ann said she was aware of them and did not feel threatened by them, as her beliefs embraced love in many forms. Despite her calm exterior, Judy Ann's responses raised some eyebrows. She claimed to have spiritual sexual relationships with various celebrities such as Tom Cruise and Oprah, along with historical figures like Jane Austen and Jane Eyre. In fact, she claimed to have had sex with every Jane who had ever lived, which made her seem less credible. The detectives found it hard to take her completely seriously, but continued to probe for any possible motive. The detectives also considered Judy Ann's knowledge of natural substances. They wondered if she could have used her expertise to commit the crime in a unique way. However, the method of murder, a 9mm handgun, did not fit her usual practices. There were no signs of her involvement in acquiring or using a firearm. Judy Ann's calm and cooperative demeanor during the interrogation contrasted with the brutal nature of the crime. She maintained her innocence throughout, expressing deep sorrow for the loss of her friend. The detectives noted her emotional responses, but knew they needed more concrete evidence to rule her out as a suspect. On February 22, 2004, Palm Bay police received a significant breakthrough in the case. It was a sunny, warm afternoon when a local retiree, 98-year-old Maria May Cleaton, was cleaning out her garage. While sorting through some old boxes, she stumbled upon a VHS tape without a label. Curious, she decided to play it in her VCR, a Panasonic model she had owned for years. To her shock, the tape contained a homemade adult movie featuring Jenny Braze and David Clark, the local high school principal. Horrified by what she saw and on the verge of having a heart attack, Maria May immediately called the police and handed over the tape. Detectives Carol Harrison and Brielle Honley viewed the tape and were stunned by its contents. The video not only confirmed an affair between Jenny and David Clark, but also suggested a potential motive. The detectives noted the sexually explicit nature of the footage and the fact that it might have been filmed secretly. The discovery of the VHS tape added a new layer to the investigation. The police speculated that the tape could be a motive for murder, either to silence Jenny or to prevent the tape from being exposed. Detective Harrison believed the tape might be the key to solving the case. The police continued to investigate the origin of the VHS tape. They discovered that the tape had been recorded on an old camcorder, a Sony Handycam model. They traced the serial number to a store in Palm Bay, where it was purchased 2 years earlier. The store's records showed it was bought with a credit card belonging to Judy Ann Wharton. This new evidence shifted the focus back to Judy Ann. The detectives brought her in for further questioning. Judy Ann maintained her innocence and denied any knowledge of the tape. She suggested that someone might be trying to frame her. The discovery of the VHS tape raised more questions than answers, but it was a crucial piece of evidence. The police knew they had to dig deeper to uncover the truth and bring justice for Jenny Braze. David Clark, The local high school principal became a key suspect after the discovery of the VHS tape. David, 65 years old, was known for his strict, no-nonsense approach to administration. He had a reputation for being authoritative, often making controversial decisions, like banning books such as Anne of Green Gables and Little House on the Prairie for their perceived erotic content. On February 23, 2004, detectives Carol Harrison and Brielle humbly brought David in for further questioning. The police station was buzzing with activity, and David seemed visibly nervous as he sat in the interrogation room. The detectives presented the sexually explicit VHS tape as evidence, and David's reaction was one of extreme shock and shame. David admitted to the affair with Jenny, but insisted that it was consensual and that he had no part in her murder. He confessed that their relationship had been ongoing for about a year and that they had met in secret to avoid scandal. He explained that the tape was part of a collection of homemade adult movie they had filmed with Judy Ann, acting as director and camera woman, a situation not uncommon in a state where 1 out of every 8 adults have performed in an adult movie. The detectives dug deeper, questioning David about his whereabouts on the night of the murder. David claimed he was at home, grading papers and watching the evening news on WKMG News 6. His wife Elis confirmed his alibi, stating they spent the evening together. Despite his strong alibi, the detectives remained suspicious. David's demeanor during the interrogation was a mix of fear and defensiveness. He denied any involvement in Jenny's death and seemed genuinely distressed about the accusations. The detectives noted his nervousness and asked if he had any enemies who might want to frame him. David mentioned several parents and staff members who were unhappy with his strict policies, but none seemed likely suspects. The police also investigated David's financial records and phone logs. They found no evidence of financial trouble or suspicious activity. His phone records showed no contact with Jenny on the day of the murder, supporting his claim that they hadn't planned to meet. However, the detectives were not entirely convinced of David's innocence. A sexually explicit tape, his secret relationship with Jenny, and his authoritative nature all pointed to possible motives. They knew they needed more evidence to either clear his name or prove his guilt. As the investigation continued, the community of Palm Bay was left reeling from the revelations. Parents and students at the high school were shocked to learn about David's secret hobby and his affair with Jenny. The detectives were determined to get to the bottom of the case, knowing that every piece of evidence brought them closer to finding Jenny's killer. On February 24, 2004, after days of intense investigation, the police finally identified the murderer, Arthur Braze, Jenny's husband. Arthur, 36, worked at a local pet supply store and was known for his logical and methodical nature. The police pieced together a timeline of events and evidence that pointed directly to him. Arthur discovered Jenny's affairs with David Clark and Judy Ann Wharton, which left him feeling utterly betrayed. The emotional turmoil and anger drove him to meticulously plan her murder. His motive was clear: revenge and a desire to expose Jenny's infidelity. On the night of the murder, Arthur left work earlier than he claimed. Surveillance footage from a nearby gas station showed him purchasing a pair of gloves and a bottle of water around 8 p.m. This contradicted his alibi of working late. Additionally, ballistics tests confirmed that the bullets used in Jenny's murder came from the 9mm handgun registered to Arthur, which he claimed had been stolen. The detectives also found traces of gunpowder residue on a jacket in Arthur's closet, further incriminating him. On the sunny morning of February 24, the detectives, armed with an arrest warrant, arrived at Arthur's house. It was a tense moment as they knocked on the door, knowing they were about to confront the prime suspect. Arthur opened the door, looking tired and stressed. When the detectives informed him that he was under arrest for the murder of his wife, he appeared shocked but did not resist. His demeanor was one of resignation, as if he knew this moment was inevitable. The police handcuffed him and led him to the squad car while the neighbors watched in disbelief. The arrest sent shockwaves through the community of Palm Bay. Jenny's family, still grieving her loss, were devastated to learn that Arthur was the murderer. They had trusted him and never suspected he could commit such a heinous act. Their reactions were a mix of sorrow and anger, struggling to understand how someone so close could betray them. As Arthur was taken into custody, the detectives reflected on the complexity of the case. They had uncovered layers of secrets and lies, ultimately leading them to the truth. The evidence was overwhelming, and they were confident they had the right person. The arrest of Arthur Braze brought a sense of closure to the community, but also left many questions about how such a tragedy could occur. The detectives knew that while the arrest was a significant step, the journey to justice for Jenny Braze was far from over. Arthur Braze's trial began on May 15, 2005, at the Brevard County Courthouse. The community of Palm Bay was captivated by the case, which had dominated local news for months. The courtroom was filled with reporters, family members, and curious residents eager to see justice served. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Sarah Goober, a 45-year-old with a reputation for being tough and thorough. Goobert argued that Arthur had meticulously planned Jenny's murder out of jealousy and anger over her affairs. She presented the gunpowder residue, the incriminating surveillance footage, and the ballistics evidence as proof. Goobert also highlighted the note written in Jenny's blood, "I am a cheater," as a clear sign of Arthur's motive. The defense attorney, Robert Lackley, was a seasoned lawyer known for his calm demeanor and sharp intellect. Lackley, 50, argued that the evidence was circumstantial and that there was no direct proof linking Arthur to the crime scene at the exact time of the murder. He suggested that someone else could have framed Arthur, pointing out the other suspects, David Clark and Judy M. Wharton, who also had motives. Throughout the trial, Jenny's family sat in the front row, their faces a mix of sorrow and determination. They listened intently as witnesses testified and evidence was presented. The emotional toll was visible, especially when the sexually explicit VHS tape was shown in court, graphically revealing Jenny's affair with David Clark. After 2 weeks of intense testimony, the jury deliberated for 3 days. On June 3, 2005, they reached a verdict. The courtroom was silent as the foreman stood to deliver the decision, guilty of first-degree murder. Arthur Braze showed little emotion as the verdict was read, his face pale and expressionless. Arthur was sentenced to 500 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentence brought a sense of relief to Jenny's family, but also a deep sadness that such a tragedy had occurred. The community of Palm Bay reacted with mixed emotions. Some felt justice had been served, while others were still shocked that Arthur, a man they had trusted, could commit such a brutal crime. The case sparked conversations about domestic violence and the hidden lives people leave behind closed doors. After the trial of Arthur Braze concluded in June 2004, the residents of Palm Bay, Florida, began the long process of moving forward. David Clark, the high school principal, faced severe backlash after the trial. His affair with Jenny and the explicit VHS tape had tarnished his reputation. He resigned from his position and moved away from Palm Bay, seeking anonymity in a small town in Georgia. Despite his involvement in the scandal, he was never charged with any crime related to Jenny's death. Judy M. Wharton, Jenny's friend and another suspect, continued her work as a metaphysical surgeon and spiritual healer. Although she was cleared of any wrongdoing, the scandal affected her business. She held a public healing ceremony for Jenny, inviting those who knew and loved her to join in a collective remembrance. This event helped Judy Ann regain some trust and respect in the community. Arthur Braze, now serving a life sentence without parole, adjusted to life in prison. He participated in counseling and anger management programs, but the weight of his actions haunted him. Occasionally, he wrote letters to his children, hoping one day they might understand his actions, though it seemed unlikely. The trial and its aftermath left a lasting impact on Palm Bay. The community became more vigilant about domestic issues, with local organizations hosting workshops on recognizing and preventing domestic violence. Jenny's story served as a sobering reminder of the importance of open communication and support in relationships. As time passed, the memory of Jenny Braze remained a poignant chapter in Palm Bay's history. The community's resilience and commitment to honoring her legacy ensured that her spirit lived on through the activities and causes she loved. Jake Malton was 35 years old when he died. He lived in Naperville, Illinois, a peaceful suburb near Chicago. Jake was a well-respected man with a sharp mind and a charming personality. He worked as a finance manager at a local investment firm, where he was known for his leadership skills and dedication. He had graduated from Northwestern University with a degree in finance and was seen as a rising star in his field. At home, Jake was a loving father and devoted husband. He lived with his wife, Laura Beth Malton, and their 2 children, Ponderosa and Arson. Jake had a passion for sailing Lake Michigan and spent many weekends at the local marina with his children. His kids loved these outings, and Jake often talked about buying a small sailboat. He was also an active member of the community, participating in local events and charity drives. Jake's personality was a mix of professionalism and warmth. He was friendly and approachable, making him well-liked by his colleagues and neighbors. Jake dreamed of one day taking a sabbatical to spend more time with his family and perhaps travel around the world. In the days leading up to his death, Jake was busy planning a family vacation to the Bahamas. He wanted to surprise his children with the trip, and they were excited about it. In February of 2012, Naperville was frigid, with temperatures often dipping below freezing. The local news was buzzing about the upcoming Super Bowl. Jake, a fan of the Chicago Bears, enjoyed discussing the games with his friends. He was also a subscriber to the Wall Street Journal and kept up with the latest news in finance and business. Jake and his family lived in a comfortable home in a quiet neighborhood. Their house was always warm and inviting, with a cozy living room filled with family photos and mementos from their trips. The Malton family was close-knit, often spending evenings together watching movies or playing board games like Monopoly and Scrabble. In his professional life, Jake had recently been working on a big project at his firm, which had been taking up a lot of his time. Despite his busy schedule, he always made time for his family. His colleagues admired his ability to balance work and family life so well. Jake's dreams and plans for the future were cut short by his tragic death, leaving a void in the lives of those who knew and loved him. On the morning of February 18, 2012, at around 7:30 a.m., a tragic discovery was made in Naperville, Illinois. Laura Beth Malden, Jake Malden's wife, woke up and found her husband's body lying next to her in their bedroom. He had been shot twice. The room was eerily clean, with no signs of a struggle, which suggested that the crime had been planned. Laura Beth, upon finding Jake dead in their bed, was in a state of shock. She immediately called 911, her voice shaking as she spoke to the emergency operator. The operator tried to keep Laura Beth calm while dispatching police and emergency services to their home. Laura Beth's voice trembled as she described finding Jake. Her words were frantic, and she could hardly believe what she was seeing. The operator stayed on the line with her until help arrived. When the police arrived, they found Laura Beth sitting on the floor outside the bedroom, crying and holding her phone. The house was in perfect order, except for the horrifying sight in the bedroom. Jake was lying on the bed, and it was clear he had been dead for several hours. The officers immediately secured the area and began their investigation. By mid-morning, the news had spread throughout Naperville. Local news channels like NBC Chicago and newspapers such as the Chicago Tribune began reporting on the incident. The media coverage added to the tension as reporters and cameras gathered outside the Malton home. As the day went on, the police continued to piece together the events leading up to Jake's death. Laura Beth was taken to the station for questioning, still in a state of shock. The detectives knew they had to act quickly to solve the mystery of Jake Malden's death. On February 18, 2012, the police arrived quickly at the Malton home in Naperville, Illinois. They entered the quiet, neat house and found Laura Beth Malton sitting outside the bedroom, crying. The officers immediately secured the area and called in detectives. Detective Jason Hollis and Detective Sarah Lee Green, both experienced investigators, arrived soon after. Hollis was known for being methodical and detail-oriented, while Green had a reputation for her sharp intuition. They began by carefully examining the bedroom where Jake Malden's body was found. The scene was eerily tidy, with no signs of a struggle, suggesting that the murder had been carefully planned. Jake had been shot twice, and there was no sign of forced entry into the house. Detectives Hollis and Green used various tools to investigate the crime scene. They sprayed luminol, a chemical that glows blue in the presence of blood, to check for any traces that might have been cleaned up. They also took photographs and collected fingerprints from around the room. Forensic experts arrived to gather evidence, including fibers and hair samples, which they bagged and tagged for further analysis. The detectives then moved on to interviewing Laura Beth, who was still in shock. She told them that she had woken up to find Jake dead beside her. Her statements were emotional and confused, making it hard for the detectives to get a clear picture. The officers also spoke with the neighbors, but no one had seen or heard anything unusual, except for one elderly neighbor who mentioned hearing a loud noise the night before. As the investigation continued, the detectives discovered that Jake had been shot with a small-caliber handgun. They searched the house thoroughly, but did not find the weapon. This made them suspect that the killer had taken it with them. They also checked the security cameras in the neighborhood, hoping to find any clues, but the footage did not reveal any suspicious activity. The detectives knew they had to work quickly. They analyzed the evidence collected from the scene, hoping to find leads that would point them toward the murderer. The tidy crime scene, the lack of forced entry, and the missing weapon all suggested that the killer was someone who knew Jake well. Detectives Hollis and Green were determined to uncover the truth and bring justice to Jake Malden. The first suspect in Jake Malden's murder was his wife, Laura Beth Malden. Laura Beth was 32 years old and known for being outgoing and sociable. She had a passion for literature and loved hosting book clubs and charity events at their home. People in the community described her as warm and generous, but lately, some friends had noticed she seemed more withdrawn and anxious. Given that she had easy access to Jake's bedroom, the police had to consider her a suspect. On February 18, 2012, after the police secured the crime scene, Laura Beth was taken to the police station for questioning. The detectives, Jason Hollis and Sarah Lee Green, wanted to know more about her relationship with Jake and her activities the night he was killed. During the interrogation, Laura Beth was visibly upset. She was crying and seemed very confused. Her voice trembled as she explained that she had woken up and found Jake dead beside her. Detective Hollis asked her detailed questions about their relationship, and Laura Beth admitted that they had been going through a rough patch. She mentioned that Jake had been very busy with work and that they had been arguing more than usual. Detective Green asked about the gun used in the murder. Laura Beth denied knowing anything about it. She insisted that she did not own a gun and had no idea where it could have come from. The detectives noted that Laura Beth's responses were emotional, and at times she seemed overwhelmed. Her demeanor was a mix of sorrow and confusion, making it hard for the detectives to determine if she was hiding something or genuinely shocked by her husband's death. As the interrogation continued, the detectives learned more about the Maltons' financial situation. Laura Beth mentioned that Jake handled most of their finances and that she was not aware of any major issues. However, she did know that Jake had been stressed about a big project at work. Meanwhile, the police continued to gather evidence from the Malton home. They searched for any signs that could link Laura Beth to the crime. They checked her phone records, emails, and social media accounts, looking for any clues. Despite the lack of clear evidence pointing directly at Laura Beth, her emotional state and proximity to the crime made her a key figure in the investigation. The detectives knew they needed more information to either confirm or dismiss their suspicions about her involvement in Jake's death. The second suspect in Jake Malden's murder was his boss, Merle O'Brien. Merle was 48 years old and known as an ambitious, driven man. He had built his investment firm from the ground up and was described as a workaholic. Merle was meticulous and sometimes ruthless in his business dealings. Recently, Jake and Merle had disagreed over the direction of the company, leading to tension between them. On February 19, 2012, the day after Jake was found dead, detectives Jason Hollis and Sarah Lee Green brought Merle in for questioning. Merle arrived at the police station in a neat suit, looking calm and composed. He greeted the detectives with a firm handshake, showing no signs of nervousness. Detective Hollis started by asking Merle about his relationship with Jake. Merle admitted that they had disagreements, but insisted it was nothing out of the ordinary for business partners. He spoke highly of Jake's skills and expressed shock at his death. Detective Green then asked about the night of the murder. Merle provided an alibi, stating he was at a company dinner event. He even named several colleagues who could confirm his whereabouts. The detectives also questioned Merle about rumors that Jake was planning to report him for sexually harassing secretaries at the firm. Merle's demeanor shifted slightly, but he remained composed. He denied any wrongdoing and suggested that Jake might have been mistaken or misled. The police also investigated Merle's financial records and found that Jake had been handling a major project that could have impacted the company's future. This project had been a source of their recent disagreements. The detectives considered the possibility that Merle had a financial motive to get rid of Jake. As the questioning continued, Merle kept his composure, calmly answering all of the detectives' questions. He maintained that he had no reason to harm Jake and that their disagreements were purely professional. Detective Hollis and Detective Green noted that while Merle seemed to have a solid alibi, his motive couldn't be ignored. They decided to verify his alibi by speaking with his colleagues and checking the event's guest list. They also continued to look into the company's financial dealings, hoping to find more clues. Despite Merle's calm and collected responses, the detectives knew they had to keep investigating all angles. Merle remained a key suspect as they worked to uncover the truth behind Jake Malden's murder. On February 21, 2012, 3 days after Jake Malden's death, the weather in Naperville was cold and overcast. At around 10:00 a.m., a breakthrough in the case occurred. A neighbor, while walking her dog near the Malton home, was shocked to find a small handgun in a nearby park. The park was a popular spot for families and dog walkers, making it an unusual place to find a weapon. The neighbor immediately called the police. Detectives Jason Hollis and Sarah Lee Green were informed about the new evidence. They felt a sense of urgency as they awaited the forensic results. Later that afternoon, the forensic team confirmed that the handgun was indeed the one used to kill Jake. The discovery of the gun was a significant development in the investigation. The detectives reviewed the security footage from the park but found nothing suspicious. They decided to canvass the neighborhood again, hoping to find witnesses who might have seen someone disposing of the gun. They spoke with several residents, including an elderly neighbor, who mentioned seeing a woman walking toward the park late at night, but she couldn't identify her. As they investigated further, Detective Hollis found fingerprints on the gun. The prints matched those of Marie Castelchant, the Maltons' next-door neighbor and a close friend of Laura Beth. Marie was known for being kind-hearted and loyal. This connection made her a key person of interest. With this new evidence, the detectives felt they were getting closer to solving the case. The discovery of the gun and the connection to Marie added a new layer of complexity, but it also brought them one step closer to finding Jake Malton's murderer. The third suspect in Jake Malton's murder was Marie Castelchant, the Maltons' next-door neighbor. Marie, 38, was known for her kindness and loyalty in the community, but she harbored a secret life as well. Under the alias Cookie LaGuardia, Marie worked as a stripper, a fact that added a layer of complexity to the investigation. On February 22, 2012, detectives Jason Hollis and Sarah Lee Green brought Marie in for questioning. The day was cold and cloudy, typical of February in Naperville. Mary looked nervous as she entered the police station, aware that her fingerprints had been found on the gun used to kill Jake. Detective Hollis started the interrogation by asking Marie about her relationship with the Maltons. She admitted that she and Jake had been having an affair, but insisted that she had nothing to do with his murder. Marie explained that she had been home alone the night Jake was killed, which made her alibi weak. Detective Green then asked about the handgun found in the park. Mary became visibly anxious and struggled to explain how her fingerprints ended up on the weapon. She said that Jake had visited her a few days before his death and brought the gun with him. According to Mary, Jake was worried about their affair being discovered and wanted to protect her. However, this explanation seemed suspicious to the detectives. The police also discovered that Jake had secretly mortgaged his house to pay Mary's bills. This financial connection added another layer to the investigation, suggesting a possible motive for Marie. Despite her calm and kind demeanor, the detectives knew they had to dig deeper into her background. As they questioned Marie further, the detectives noticed inconsistencies in her story. She initially claimed she had no idea Jake was playing Divisic the night of his death, but later admitted he had called her earlier that day. Detective Hollis pressed on, asking why she hadn't mentioned this earlier. Mary became flustered and started to stammer. To gather more evidence, the detectives decided to search Marie's home. They found letters from Jake expressing regret over their affair and hinting at emotional manipulation within his marriage. These letters provided insight into Jake's state of mind and suggested that he was planning to confess to Laura Beth and end the affair. Detectives Hollis and Green knew they had to proceed carefully. They continued to investigate Mary's connection to Jake, hoping to find the evidence needed to solve the case and bring justice for Jake Malton. On February 23, 2012, the police in Naperville, Illinois, were ready to make an arrest in the murder of Jake Malton. After days of investigation, they had gathered enough evidence to identify the murderer. The police had pieced together a tragic story of betrayal, financial stress, and emotional breakdown. The detectives found a crucial piece of evidence in Jake's home office, a letter he had written to his children, Ponderosa and Arson. In the letter, Jake expressed regret and guilt over his affair with Marie Castelchant. He also mentioned his plans to confess to Laura Beth and end the affair. The letter showed a darker side of Jake, hinting at emotional manipulation within his marriage. This letter, combined with the evidence gathered, pointed to Laura Beth Malton as the murderer. Detectives Jason Hollis and Sarah Lee Green arrived at the Malton home at 9:00 a.m. to arrest Laura Beth. The morning was cold, with a light snowfall covering the ground. Laura Beth was in the kitchen, making breakfast for her children. When the detectives informed her of the arrest, she was visibly shocked. She broke down in tears, repeatedly screaming, "Let those without sin cast the first stone." The detectives carefully explained the evidence against her. They mentioned the financial stress caused by Jake's secret mortgage to pay Mary's bills and the emotional toll of discovering his affair. They also pointed out the letter Jake had written, which showed his intention to confess and the manipulation within their marriage. Laura Beth's world had been shattered by these revelations, leading her to a breaking point. Laura Beth was handcuffed and taken to the police station. The local news stations, including NBC Chicago, quickly picked up the story. Reporters gathered outside the Malton home, capturing the moment as Laura Beth was led away by the police. The community was in shock, struggling to comprehend how a seemingly perfect family could be torn apart by such a tragedy. At the police station, Laura Beth made a chilling confession to the murder. She explained that she had found out about Jake's affair and the financial problems he had caused. In a moment of utter despair and emotional breakdown, she had shot Jake in their bedroom, unable to cope with the betrayal and stress. She admitted to disposing of the gun in the nearby park, hoping to distance herself from the crime. The arrest of Laura Beth brought a sense of relief to Jake's family and friends, but it also left them with a deep sadness. They struggled to understand how things had gone so wrong. The detectives felt a mix of satisfaction and sorrow, knowing they had solved the case but also aware of the devastating impact on the Malton family. The trial of Laura Beth Malton began on May 15, 2012, in Naperville, Illinois. The courtroom was packed with local residents, reporters from NBC Chicago, and members of Jake Malton's family. The atmosphere was tense as everyone awaited the outcome of this tragic case. The prosecution was led by Assistant State's Attorney Michael Health Backley, a 45-year-old known for his strong sense of justice and meticulous preparation. Health Backley argued that Laura Beth had carefully planned the murder of her husband, driven by jealousy and financial stress. He presented evidence of Jake's affair with Marie Castelchan, the financial problems due to the secret mortgage, and the letter Jake had written, which showed his intention to confess and end the affair. Health Backley painted a picture of Laura Beth as a woman pushed to the edge, ultimately committing a desperate act of violence. The defense attorney, Dorothea Blake, a 38-year-old with a reputation for her empathetic approach, represented Laura Beth. Blake argued that Laura Beth was a devoted wife and mother who had been emotionally manipulated by Jake. She claimed that Laura Beth's actions were the result of a momentary breakdown caused by extreme emotional distress. Blake highlighted Laura Beth's clean record and her dedication to her family, suggesting that she was not capable of premeditated murder. As the trial proceeded, the emotional toll on Jake's family was evident. His children, Ponderosa and Arson, were seen in the courtroom, supported by other family members. They appeared heartbroken and confused, struggling to understand the events that had led to their father's death and their mother's trial. After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for 3 days. On June 1, 2012, they returned with a verdict of guilty of second-degree murder. The judge sentenced Laura Beth Malton to 20 years in prison, considering the emotional distress she had been under but also the severity of her crime. The reaction to the verdict was mixed. Jake's family felt a sense of justice, but were also saddened by the reality that Laura Beth, someone they had known and loved, was responsible for his death. Some community members felt the sentence was too lenient, while others believed it was fair given the circumstances. The trial and verdict had a profound effect on everyone involved. Jake's family and friends were left to pick up the pieces, struggling with the loss of both Jake and Laura Beth. The community of Naperville was deeply affected as they had lost a respected member and witnessed the unraveling of what seemed to be a perfect family. In the aftermath, discussions about emotional health and the pressures of maintaining a facade and seemingly perfect lives became more prominent. The trial had not only brought closure to Jake's murder, but also shed light on the underlying issues that led to this tragic event. After Laura Beth Malton's trial and sentencing, life in Naperville slowly returned to normal, but the effects of Jake Malton's murder lingered in the community. The Malton children, Ponderosa and Arson, were taken in by their grandparents, who provided them with love and stability during this difficult time. They received support from neighbors and friends, who rallied around them in their grief. Meanwhile, the Malton family home became a quiet reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded there. The neighbors, who had once seen the Maltons as a model family, now whispered about the secrets that had torn them apart. The local newspaper, Naperville Sun, covered the aftermath of the trial extensively, reflecting on the impact of the case on the tight-knit community. Laura Beth Malton began serving her sentence at White Correctional Center, a women's prison in Illinois. Her adjustment to prison life was difficult, as she navigated the challenges of being away from her children and coming to terms with her actions. Reports from the prison mentioned that Laura Beth kept to herself, spending her days reflecting on her choices and participating in prison programs aimed at rehabilitation. The trial also sparked discussions in Naperville about the pressures of maintaining appearances and the impact of emotional distress on individuals and families. Some community members advocated for better mental health support, while others emphasized the importance of open communication in relationships. In the years following the trial, Ponderosa and Arson grew up surrounded by love and support from their extended family. They remembered their father fondly and cherished the memories they had of him sailing and enjoying family vacations. Their resilience and strength became a testament to the community's ability to come together in the face of adversity. Valerie Camden, a 41-year-old woman from Knoxville, Tennessee, was well known in her community. She owned a successful pool supply store, Valerie's Pools, which many locals trusted for their pool needs. Valerie was known for her bright and cheerful personality. She always had a smile on her face and was dedicated to helping her customers. Valerie had a strong educational background, having graduated from the University of Tennessee with a degree in business administration. She applied her knowledge and skills to make her store a beloved local business. Valerie's personal life was challenging but inspiring. In her early 20s, she went through a difficult divorce and became a single mother to her triplets, Ethan, Nathan, and Alan, all of whom are deaf. Despite the financial strain, Valerie worked tirelessly to provide for her children. She faced a significant debt to provide for them, but she never let it dampen her spirit. Valerie was a loving mother who supported her children in every way possible. She was actively involved in the deaf community, advocating for better resources and opportunities for children with disabilities. In the days leading up to her death in November 2018, Valerie was excited about the upcoming Thanksgiving holiday. She planned to host a big family dinner and had already started preparing. Valerie was also working on expanding her business, hoping to open a second store in the next town over. She dreamed of providing better financial stability for her family and giving back to the community that supported her. Valerie had a close-knit group of friends and was known to frequent local spots like Starbucks and the local Waller. Her friends described her as kind-hearted and always ready to lend a helping hand. She was involved in various community activities, including volunteering at the local food bank and participating in charity events. Valerie's dedication extended beyond her family and business. She was a passionate advocate for other single mothers, especially those raising children with disabilities. She often spoke at local events and used her story to inspire others. Valerie's dreams were big, and her heart was even bigger. She hoped to create a foundation to support single mothers and provide scholarships for children with disabilities. Valerie Camden was a remarkable woman whose life, though filled with challenges, was a testament to strength, love, and determination. However, her brutal murder would erase all those achievements in the mind of Knoxville for years to come. On the morning of November 22, 2018, Thanksgiving Day, Knoxville was unusually cold and overcast. At around 8:30 a.m., Ethan Camden, one of Valerie's 19-year-old deaf triplets, made a horrifying discovery. Ethan, who had just woken up, went to check on his mom. He found Valerie's lifeless body in the master bathroom of their home. She was naked and strangled with a rope in the shower. Ethan was in shock. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. His hands trembled, and he felt frozen in place. After a few moments, he snapped out of his daze and ran to get his brothers, Nathan and Alan. The three of them stood there, stunned and scared, not knowing what to do. Nathan, who had more hearing and had better speaking skills than the other triplets, grabbed the phone and called 911. His voice was shaky as he tried to explain the situation. "My mom. She's in the bathroom. She's not moving," he cried, his voice almost unintelligible. The 911 operator tried to calm him down and give more details. Within minutes, the police and emergency responders were on their way. When the first responders arrived, they were met with a heart-wrenching scene. The triplets were huddled together, their faces pale and eyes wide with fear. Officer Jane Miller was the first to enter the bathroom. She had been with the Knoxville Police Department for over 15 years and thought she had seen it all. But the sight of Valerie's lifeless body left her speechless. She took a deep breath and called for backup. As more officers arrived, they began to secure the crime scene. They immediately noticed the cleanliness of the bathroom, except for the signs of a struggle. There were no obvious fingerprints or signs of forced entry. While the police worked inside, the triplets were taken outside and given blankets to keep warm. The neighbors started to gather, whispering among themselves. Local news channels, including WBIR-TV, arrived to cover the breaking news. Reporters tried to get statements from the police and neighbors, but everyone was too shocked to say much. Ethan, Nathan, and Alan were taken to the police station to give their statements. They were still in a state of shock, struggling to understand what had happened. The police knew they had to act quickly to find out who was responsible for this horrific crime. When the Knoxville Police Department arrived at the Camden home on November 22, 2018, it was around 9:00 a.m. The sky was overcast, and the cold air hinted at the coming winter. Officers moved quickly to secure the area and keep onlookers away. Detective Catherine Bernard and Officer Daniel Ford led the investigation. They were known for their thorough and methodical work. Detective Bernard first spoke with Ethan, Nathan, and Alan Camden, who were still visibly shaken. She gently asked them to describe what happened, and then sent them to the station for detailed statements. Her primary focus now was on the crime scene. The master bathroom, where Valerie Camden's body was found, was eerily clean. Valerie lay naked in the shower, strangled with a rope. The scene suggested a struggle, but there were no signs of forced entry, and the rest of the house was undisturbed. Detective Bernard noted that this indicated the killer was someone Valerie knew and trusted. Detective Bernard and Officer Ford examined the bathroom carefully. The rope used to strangle Valerie was a simple, sturdy type, the kind you might find at a hardware store like Home Depot, known worldwide as America's friendliest big box store. They collected fingerprints from various surfaces, including the shower and door handles. The crime scene unit used luminol to detect any traces of blood that might have been cleaned up. Outside the house, the police set up perimeter. Neighbors gathered, whispering about the tragedy. Local news stations like WBIR-TV and the Knoxville News Sentinel sent reporters to cover the story. The media presence added pressure on the police to find answers quickly. Detective Bernard called in a forensic team to assist with the investigation. They photographed the scene, collected samples, and searched for any overlooked clues. The team also checked for surveillance footage from nearby homes and businesses, hoping to find any suspicious activity. The police interviewed the Camden family's neighbors. One neighbor mentioned she saw a car she didn't recognize parked near the Camden house the night before. She couldn't recall the make or model but thought it was dark-colored. Another neighbor said he heard arguing coming from the Camden home earlier in the week, but he thought it was just a typical family disagreement you might hear around Thanksgiving. As the investigation continued, Detective Bernard and her team worked around the clock. They reviewed Valerie's phone records, emails, and social media accounts. They wanted to understand her relationships and any possible motives for her murder. The clean crime scene, the lack of forced entry, and the methodical nature of the murder pointed to a calculated and deliberate act. Detective Bernard knew this was just the beginning. They needed to dig deeper into Valerie's life and those closest to her to uncover the truth. Brett Camden, Valerie's 61-year-old second husband, was the first person the police investigated. Brett was an investment fund manager well known in Knoxville's financial circles. Outwardly, he seemed like a loving and supportive husband, but the police had to look deeper. Brett was at work when the police contacted him about Valerie's death. He appeared shocked and distraught, immediately driving to the police station. Detective Bernard met with him in a quiet room, where he slumped into a chair, his face pale. Brett explained that he had left for work early that morning and had no idea what happened to Valerie. He described their marriage as happy, but admitted they had their share of arguments, mostly about money. Valerie was in significant debt, around $200,000, due to the cost of raising her deaf triplets as a single mother. Brett said he tried to help, but it was a constant source of stress. The police asked Brett about his relationship with the triplets. He claimed to care for them deeply, even though he wasn't their biological father. Detective Bernard noted his calm and composed demeanor, but she also sensed he was hiding something. Brett's colleagues at his investment firm described him as a hard worker but very controlling. Some even mentioned he could be manipulative. This raised red flags for Detective Bernard. She dug deeper into Brett's personal life, interviewing friends and neighbors. Rumors surfaced that behind closed doors, Brett was not as loving as he appeared. Some neighbors said they heard loud arguments coming from the Camden house. One of Valerie's friends mentioned that Valerie once showed her a bird mark on her arm, which she claimed Brett had caused with a fireplace poker. The police brought Brett back for further questioning. This time, he seemed more nervous. Detective Bernard asked him directly about the bird marks and the rumors of him being controlling. Brett's calm facade cracked. He denied everything, but his voice was shaky. He insisted that he loved Valerie and would never hurt her. To confirm Brett's alibi, the police reviewed security footage from his office building. It showed Brett arriving at work at 7:00 a.m. as he claimed. However, there was a gap of about 30 minutes when Brett's whereabouts were unaccounted for. With more questions than answers, the police kept Brett under close watch. They needed more evidence to determine if Brett was involved in Valerie's murder. The investigation was far from over. Ethan Camben, one of Valerie's 19-year-old death triplets, was the second person the police investigated. Ethan had recently graduated from a school for the deaf and dreamed of becoming a graphic designer. However, he had struggled to find a job and had turned to drugs to cope with the stress and chaos at home. Ethan was known for his shy and reserved nature, often escaping into his art. When the police brought Ethan in for questioning, he looked scared and confused. Detective Bernard communicated with him through a sign language interpreter. She asked Ethan about his relationship with his mother and stepfather. Ethan described his mother as loving and supportive, but his feelings toward Brett were more complicated. He admitted that Brett was controlling and sometimes abusive, but he was too afraid to say anything more. Ethan had a weak alibi for the morning of Valerie's murder. He said he was at home, asleep in his room, but there were no witnesses to confirm this. Detective Bernard asked him about his drug use, and Ethan confessed to using marijuana to deal with his anxiety. He insisted that he would never hurt his mother, tears streaming down his face as he signed his responses. The police searched Ethan's room and found drug paraphernalia, but nothing that directly connected him to Valerie's murder. They also reviewed his social media accounts and phone records, looking for any clues. Ethan's online activity showed a young man struggling with his emotions, but not someone planning a murder. Detective Bernard interviewed Ethan's friends from deaf school. They described him as talented and quiet, often keeping to himself. Some friends mentioned that Ethan had talked about his stepfather's harsh behavior, but never hinted at any violent intentions. The investigation revealed that Ethan had been under immense pressure. The family's financial troubles, combined with the abuse he saw from Brett against his mother, had taken a toll on him. Detective Bernard considered Ethan a potential suspect due to his weak alibi and emotional turmoil, but she needed more concrete evidence. As the police continued to dig into Ethan's background, they found no solid proof linking him to the crime. Detective Bernard's intuition told her that Ethan was more of a victim in this situation, trapped in a toxic household. The focus of the investigation began to shift away from Ethan as new leads emerged. In late November 2018, the investigation into Valerie Camben's murder led the police to a third suspect, Nathan Camben, one of Valerie's triplets. Nathan, 19, was a star athlete on his deaf school's basketball team. His coaches often praised his dedication and talent. Nathan was outgoing, popular, and well-liked by his peers, but he struggled under the pressure of his stepfather's expectations and his need for approval. Nathan dreamed of playing basketball professionally. He had posters of NBA stars like LeBron James and Steph Curry on his bedroom walls. His friends saw him as cheerful and friendly, but those closer to him knew about the stress and fear he faced due to Brett's behavior. Detective Catherine Bernard and her team decided to bring Nathan in for questioning. On a crisp, cold morning in late November, they'd met Nathan at the police station. Through a sign language interpreter, Nathan shared his side of the story. He appeared nervous but cooperative with the investigators. Nathan explained that his relationship with Brett had always been strained. Brett's controlling nature and high expectations had caused Nathan significant stress. Brett often belittled him for not having six-pack abs, comparing him unfavorably to his brothers and looks. During the interrogation, Nathan revealed more about Brett's abusive behavior. He recounted instances where Brett had used threats and manipulation to control him and his brothers. Nathan's testimony painted a clearer picture of the toxic environment they had been living in. The police scrutinized Nathan's alibi for the night of Valerie's murder. Nathan claimed he had been at another deaf friend's house, watching the Tennessee Volunteers game on TV. His friend confirmed this alibi, and surveillance footage from a local convenience store showed Nathan and his friend buying snacks during the game. Despite Nathan's cooperation, the police needed more evidence to eliminate him as a suspect. They continued to investigate, analyzing phone records, messages, and other digital footprints. Throughout the day, the police worked diligently to gather all possible evidence from the crime scene to see if Nathan might be the killer. They knew that solving this case would require piecing together the puzzle of Valerie's fraught family relationships. On a chilly Saturday morning of November 24, 2018, a breakthrough came when a neighbor discovered a hidden USB drive in her attic while cleaning. Suspecting it didn't belong to her, she promptly contacted the authorities. Detective Bernard and Officer Daniel Ford responded swiftly, retrieving the USB drive from her home. Back at the police station, forensic experts examined the flash drive and found several video files. When they played the videos, they were horrified. The recordings showed Valerie's triplets, Ethan, Nathan, and Alan, undressing and performing suggestive dances while naked, some with quite complex choreography based on that of K-pop boy bands, both individually and as a group. The videos were addressed to someone named Jonathan, incidentally Brett's middle name. Detective Bernard felt sick as she watched the footage, vomiting profusely into a nearby trash can. It was clear that the triplets were being manipulated into a sexual relationship with someone, most likely Brett Cambin, their stepfather. The police felt confident the videos revealed Brett Cambin's dark secret. The police immediately brought Ethan, Nathan, and Alan back in for questioning. With the help of a sign language interpreter, the triplets shared their story. They explained how Brett had manipulated them for the past year into sexual relationships, pitting them against each other in various sex games with promises of more time spent with him for the winner. They said they had no idea there was anything wrong with that. Searching Brett's home office, the police discovered additional hidden USB drives containing sex tapes and a journal detailing Brett's disturbing relations with the triplets. In it, he detailed his secret relationship with the triplets, including graphic description of his sex games, and referring to the triplets as his boy harem. Detective Bernard knew this new evidence was crucial. It not only implicated Brett and Valerie's murder, but also uncovered a deeper level of abuse. With this new evidence, the police had a clearer picture of Brett's possible motive. Had he killed Valerie to keep his dark secrets hidden? Police knew Valerie would have planned to leave him and take the triplets with her if she found out. Could Brett, afraid of losing control and facing exposure, have decided to silence Valerie forever? As November 2018 drew to a close, the Knoxville police made a breakthrough in the Valerie Camden murder case. After weeks of investigation, the evidence pointed clearly to Brett Camden, Valerie's husband. Brett, 61, worked as an investment fund manager. Outwardly, he appeared to be a supportive and loving spouse, but the evidence painted a horrifyingly different picture. Brett was controlling and manipulative. He used threats and even physical violence to keep Valerie under his control. Even worse, the police uncovered a twisted and abusive sexual relationship between Brett and the triplets. He referred to them as his boy harem, exploiting their vulnerability and deafness to maintain his dominance. Detective Catherine Bernard and her team had pieced together Brett's motive for killing Valerie. Valerie had tired of his abuse and planned to leave Brett and take the triplets with her. Brett, afraid of losing his control and having his dark secrets exposed, decided to silence her forever. On the morning of November 30, 2018, with clear skies and a chilly breeze, the police moved in to arrest Brett Cambin. They arrived at his upscale home in Knoxville's affluent neighborhood. Brett was taken by surprise when the officers, led by Detective Bernard, knocked on his door. He tried to maintain his composure, but it was evident he was shocked. Brett was handcuffed and read his rights. He showed little emotion, maintaining a cold and distant demeanor. As he was escorted to the police car, neighbors watched in disbelief. The arrest was a stark contrast to the facade Brett had maintained for so long. Valerie's family, especially her triplets, were relieved but emotionally shattered. They had lived in fear and manipulation for years. The news of Brett's arrest brought a mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and anger. They hoped for justice and a chance to heal from the trauma they had endured. Detective Bernard was determined to ensure Brett faced the full consequences of his actions. She knew the case against him was strong, with the evidence gathered from the hidden USB drives, his journal, and the testimonies of the triplets. Brett's arrest marked a significant turning point in the investigation. The police had not only solved Valerie's murder, but also uncovered the horrifying abuse her family suffered under. The arrest of Brett Cambin marked a significant step in the process, bringing closure to Valerie's grieving family and friends. The trial of Brett Cambin began in early December 2018, just as the Knoxville community was preparing for the holiday season. The courtroom was packed with reporters and spectators, all eager to hear the details of the case that had shocked the city. The prosecutor, Mark Schwartzel, a 45-year-old with a reputation for being tough on crime, laid out a compelling case against Brett. He detailed Brett's abusive behavior, the manipulation of the triplets, and the cold-blooded murder of Valerie Camden. Thompson presented the videos found on the USB drives, Brett's journal, and the testimonies of Ethan, Nathan, and Alan. The evidence painted a clear picture of Brett's guilt. On the defense side, attorney Lisandra Martinez, 50, known for her tenacity in defending difficult cases, argued that Brett was a loving husband and stepfather who had been wrongly accused. She tried to cast doubt on the triplets' testimonies, suggesting they were influenced by their desire to see Brett punished. However, the overwhelming evidence made it difficult for her to build a strong defense. Throughout the trial, Valerie's family sat in the front row, visibly emotional. The triplets, now free from Brett's control, bravely testified about the abuse they had endured. Their courage moved everyone in the courtroom. The jury deliberated for only a few hours before returning with a verdict. On December 15, 2018, Brett Camden was found guilty of first-degree murder and multiple counts of abuse. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Brett showed little reaction as the verdict was read, maintaining his cold and distant demeanor. The sentencing brought a sense of relief to Valerie's family, but the pain of losing her was still raw. Valerie's sister, Susan, expressed mixed feelings outside the courthouse. "We're grateful for justice, but nothing will bring Valerie back. Our focus now is on helping the boys heal and move forward." The trial's conclusion marked the end of a dark chapter for Valerie's family and the beginning of their journey toward healing. The community rallied around them, offering support and solidarity in the aftermath of their ordeal. After the trial ended in December 2018, life slowly began to move forward for those involved in the Valerie Camden case. The Knoxville community, still shocked by the revelations, came together to support Valerie's triplets, Ethan, Nathan, and Alan. Local organizations, like the Knoxville Center for the Deaf, offered resources and counseling to help them heal. Ethan, the aspiring graphic designer, found solace in his art. He received support from the local art community and even had some of his work displayed at a gallery downtown. He began taking classes at the University of Tennessee, determined to build a future in graphic design despite the trauma he had endured. Nathan, the star athlete, returned to basketball. His teammates and coaches at his deaf school rallied around him, offering encouragement and support. He continued to excel on the court, using the sport as an outlet for his emotions. Nathan also received several college scholarship offers, giving him hope for a brighter future. Alan, the third triplet, focused on his studies. He was always the quietest of the three, but with the support of his friends and family, he began to come out of his shell. He joined a local support group for victims of abuse, where he found comfort in sharing his experiences with others who had faced similar situations. Detective Catherine Bernard, who had led the investigation, was commended for her dedication and thorough work on the case. The Knoxville Police Department recognized her with a special award, and she continued to serve the community with the same commitment and integrity. Brett Camden, now serving a life sentence without parole, had little to say about his conviction. Reports from the prison indicated that he remained isolated and unrepentant. His arrest and trial had stripped away the facade of respectability he had maintained for so long. Valerie's sister, Susan, took on a more active role in the triplets' lives. She became their legal guardian and worked tirelessly to provide a stable and loving home for them. The community's support helped her navigate the challenges of raising three traumatized teenagers. The case left a lasting impact on Knoxville, reminding everyone of the importance of vigilance and support for those in abusive situations. As the triplets began to rebuild their lives, they carried with them the memory of their mother and the hope for a better future. The case of Valerie Camden's murder is a haunting reminder of the hidden darkness that can lurk behind closed doors. Her strength and resilience continue to inspire those who knew her, while the justice served ensures that her tragic story will not be forgotten. Charlie Mabry was 42 years old. He lived in Charlotte, North Carolina, with his wife, Lisa Ann. Charlie worked as a bank manager at First Union National Bank. He was known for being very organized and responsible. Charlie grew up in Charlotte, where he attended East Mecklenburg High School. Later, he went to the University of North Carolina at Charlotte and got a degree in finance. Charlie was a quiet and thoughtful person. He loved to read books, especially mysteries, and enjoyed watching movies. Some of his favorites were old detective films. He also liked to play chess and often spent his weekends at the local chess club. His friends described him as kind and dependable. He was always there when someone needed help. Charlie was deeply in love with his wife, Lisa Ann. They had been married for 10 years. Lisa Ann was a real estate agent. She was very outgoing and loved to throw big parties. They were childless but very close to their families. Charlie's younger brother, Jock, was important to him. Jock worked as Charlie's assistant and helped to manage his busy schedule. In the days before his death, Charlie was very stressed. He had found out that Lisa Ann was having sex with several other men. This news broke his heart. He was so upset that he started eating a lot and drinking too much alcohol. He gained a lot of weight and became an alcoholic. His friends noticed that he was not himself anymore. They worried about him, but he didn't talk much about his problems. Charlie had been thinking about divorcing Lisa Ann. He knew it would be difficult, but he didn't see any other way to find peace. Despite everything, he still went to work every day and did his job well. He hoped that things would get better, but he was very sad and felt trapped in his situation. A few days before his death, Charlie spent a lot of time in his home office. He was looking through old photo albums and thinking about happier times. He also watched the news about the upcoming NCAA basketball tournament, which he always enjoyed. His friends and family didn't know how bad things had gotten for him. They were shocked when they heard the news of his death. On the morning of March 15, 2001, it was a cloudy day in Charlotte, North Carolina. At 8:30 a.m., Jock Mabry arrived at his brother Charlie's house. Jock was there to help Charlie with some work, as he often did. As he walked up to the front door, he felt a strange sense of unease. Jock knocked, but there was no answer. He used his key to open the door and called out for Charlie, but the house was silent. Jock walked through the quiet house, heading toward Charlie's home office. When he reached the door, he saw something that made his heart stop. Charlie was slumped over in his chair, a gun in his right hand, and there was a gunshot wound to his head. The sight was shocking and horrifying. Jock's hands trembled as he stood there, trying to process what he was seeing. Immediately, Jock ran to the phone and dialed 911. His voice shook as he told the operator that he had found his brother, and it looked like Charlie had taken his own life. The operator stayed on the line with Jock, trying to keep him calm while they waited for the police to arrive. Jock paced the room, looking around and trying to understand how this had happened. As he waited, Jock noticed something strange. Charlie was left-handed, but the gun was in his right hand. This detail stood out to him, making him question if this was really a suicide. He told the 911 operator about it, and she assured him that the police would investigate everything thoroughly. Within 15 minutes, the police arrived. They quickly secured the area and began their investigation, taking pictures, collecting evidence, and talking to Jock about what he had found. The police arrived at Charlie Mabry's house at 8:50 a.m. on March 15, 2001. The weather was cloudy and chilly, matching the somber mood of the situation. Detective Sarah Marlett and Detective Joe Jack Solaire led the investigation. They were known for their thorough and careful work. When the detectives entered the home office, they saw Charlie's body slumped over in his chair. The scene was disturbing. Charlie had a gunshot wound to his head, and the gun was in his right hand. This immediately caught the detectives' attention because Charlie was left-handed. There was no suicide note, which was also unusual. The detectives began their investigation by carefully examining the office. The room was mostly tidy, with just a few papers scattered on the desk. There were photos of Charlie and his wife, Lisa Ann, on the shelves. The detectives took pictures of everything and collected evidence, including the gun and any fingerprints they could find. Detective Marlett noticed the position of the gun and the angle of the wound. It didn't look right for a suicide. She and Detective Solaire discussed their observations and agreed that they needed to consider other possibilities. They talked to Jock Mabry, who had found his brother's body. Jock was visibly shaken but tried to provide as much information as he could. The detectives asked Jock about Charlie's recent behavior and any problems he might have been facing. Jock mentioned Charlie's struggles with alcohol and his distress over Lisa Ann's infidelity. He also told them about Charlie's plans to divorce Lisa Ann, which might have been a motive for someone to harm him. The detectives then used various tools to investigate the scene further. They used a special powder to find fingerprints and collected samples of anything that might provide clues, like hairs or fibers. They also checked Charlie's phone and computer for any messages or emails that could explain what happened. As they worked, Detective Solaire found a set of bank statements hidden in a drawer. These statements showed large sums of money being transferred to an offshore account in Lisa Ann's name. This discovery was significant and raised more questions about Lisa Ann's involvement. But police also talked to neighbors and friends to see if anyone had noticed anything unusual. Some neighbors mentioned hearing arguments between Charlie and Lisa Ann, which added to the suspicion. By the end of the day, the detectives had gathered a lot of evidence but still had many questions. The crime scene suggested that Charlie's death was not a simple suicide but a potential murder. The unusual details in the hidden bank statements pointed to a deeper, more complex story. The investigation was just beginning, and the detectives knew they had a challenging case ahead of them. Lisa Ann Mabry, 35, was the first suspect the police investigated. She was Charlie's wife and worked as a successful real estate agent in Charlotte, known for her charm and persuasive skills. She often hosted elaborate parties, including her infamous nude masquerade, making her a well-known figure in their community. On the afternoon of March 15, 2001, Detectives Sarah Marlett and Joe Jack Solaire visited Lisa Ann at her office. She greeted them with a calm demeanor, but the detectives could see the worry in her eyes. They began by asking her about the events leading up to Charlie's death. Lisa Ann explained that she and Charlie had been having marital problems. She admitted that they argued frequently and that Charlie was upset about what she said were her innocent and platonic friendships with other men. Lisa Ann's calmness was unsettling to the detectives. She spoke clearly and confidently, but there were inconsistencies in her statements. For example, she claimed to have been at home the previous night, but neighbors reported seeing her car leave late in the evening. The detectives then asked Lisa Ann about the hidden bank statements they found in Charlie's office. These statements showed large sums of money being transferred to an offshore account in her name. Lisa Ann seemed taken aback but quickly recovered, saying the money was for a business investment she hadn't told Charlie about. Despite her explanations, the detectives remained suspicious. They asked Lisa Ann if she knew why Charlie would have the gun in his right hand if he was left-handed. She hesitated and then suggested that he might have been secretly ambidextrous or in a state of distress. Throughout the interrogation, Lisa Ann maintained her composure. However, her calm and collected manner, combined with the hidden bank statements and the inconsistencies in her story, made her a prime suspect. The detectives noted that her possible motive could be the impending divorce, which would leave her without the financial support and lifestyle she was accustomed to. As the interview ended, Lisa Ann asked if she could go home. The detectives allowed her to leave, but made it clear that she was still under investigation. They watched as she walked out of the office, her face betraying a mix of fear and defiance. The detectives knew they needed more evidence to connect Lisa Ann directly to Charlie's death. They planned to look deeper into her financial transactions and personal relationships. Lisa Ann's hidden life and potential motives made her a key figure in unraveling the truth behind Charlie's mysterious death. Jock Mabry, 29, was the next person the police investigated. He was Charlie's younger brother and worked as Charlie's assistant. Jock was known for being loyal, efficient, and discreet. He handled Charlie's busy schedule and knew a lot about his personal life. On March 16, 2001, detectives Sarah Marlett and Joe Jack Solaire brought Jock in for questioning. They wanted to understand more about his relationship with Charlie and Lisa Ann. Jock was visibly upset but cooperative. He admitted that he had been very close to Charlie and was deeply affected by his death. The detectives asked Jock about his relationship with Lisa Ann. After a moment of hesitation, Jock confessed that he had been one of Lisa Ann's lovers. He explained that he admired her and got caught up in her charm. However, he insisted that he had no reason to harm his brother. Jock seemed genuinely remorseful and ashamed of his actions. Detective Marlett then asked Jock about the night before Charlie's death. Jock explained that he had been at home and had spoken to Charlie on the phone. Charlie seemed stressed but didn't mention anything about harming himself. Jock's alibi was solid, but the detectives still had doubts because of his close relationship with both Charlie and Lisa Ann. The detectives also questioned Jock about the hidden bank statements found in Charlie's office. Jock seemed surprised and said he had no knowledge of the offshore account. He explained that he managed Charlie's schedule and some finances but wasn't involved in all aspects of Charlie's financial life. Jock's demeanor during the interrogation was a mix of sadness and guilt. He was devastated by his brother's death and upset about his sexual involvement with Lisa Ann. The detectives noted that while Jock had a potential motive due to his affair with Lisa Ann, he also seemed genuinely distraught and cooperative. Despite his cooperation, the detectives couldn't ignore the possibility that Jock might have had a role in Charlie's death. They decided to investigate further, looking into Jock's phone records, emails, and financial transactions to see if there was any connection to the offshore account or other suspicious activities. On March 18, 2001, a few days after Charlie's death, the weather was sunny but cool in Charlotte. Detective Sarah Marlett received a call that new evidence had been found. A junior police cadet was running evidence found at the Mabry house when she noticed something shiny. Upon closer inspection, she saw it was a CD. Detective Marlett and her partner, Detective Joe Jack Soler, quickly examined the CD at the police station. They found several documents and emails on it. The emails were between Lisa Ann and an unknown person discussing plans to transfer large sums of money to an offshore account. There were also detailed plans about a new life in the Philippines. This new evidence was crucial. The detectives immediately linked the CD to the hidden bank statements they had found earlier. They'd also discovered emails that showed Lisa Ann was planning to leave both Charlie and David Palmer, Charlie's best friend, and one of her other lovers. The documents revealed Lisa Ann's true intentions and painted a clearer picture of her motives. Detectives Marlett and Soler realized that Lisa Ann had been planning her escape for a long time. She had been funneling money into an offshore account, preparing to start a new life far away. The fact that Charlie had discovered this deception might have pushed him to finally decide on a divorce, which in turn could have led Lisa Ann to take drastic measures. With this new evidence, the detectives decided to bring Lisa Ann in for another round of questioning. This time, they confronted her with the emails and plans they have found. Lisa Ann's calm demeanor began to crack. She tried to explain the emails away, saying they were part of a business deal gone wrong with a wealthy Filipino family. However, the detectives were not convinced. The new evidence also showed that David Palmer was more involved than they initially thought. His influence over Lisa Ann and their affair added another layer to the investigation. The detectives knew they had to question David Palmer with a focus on his knowledge of Lisa Ann's plans. As the detectives pieced together the information, it became clear that Charlie's death was not a simple case of suicide. The hidden bank statements, the plans for a new life, and the emails pointed to a well-thought-out scheme. The detectives were determined to uncover the truth and bring justice for Charlie. David Palmer, 50, was the next person the police investigated. David was Charlie's best friend and had a reputation for being charming, ambitious, and somewhat manipulative. He worked as a financial consultant in Charlotte and was well known in social circles. He had been involved in a secret affair with Lisa Ann for several years, which complicated the case further. On March 20, 2001, detectives Sarah Marlett and Joe Jack Soler brought David in for questioning. They wanted to understand his relationship with Charlie and Lisa Ann and to uncover any potential motives he might have had. David appeared confident but slightly nervous as he sat down in the interrogation room. The detectives began by asking David about his friendship with Charlie. David spoke fondly of Charlie, describing him as a loyal and trustworthy friend. He claimed he had no knowledge of Charlie's intention to divorce Lisa Ann and expressed shock over Charlie's death. When asked about his affair with Lisa Ann, David admitted to it, but insisted that it was purely a personal matter and had nothing to do with Charlie's death. The detectives then confronted David with the emails found on the CD. These emails showed detailed discussions between David and Lisa Ann about their plans to transfer money to an offshore account and start a new life together. David's demeanor changed. He became defensive and agitated. He claimed the emails were part of a harmless fantasy and that neither he nor Lisa Ann had any intention of acting on them. David's potential motive was clear to the detectives. With Charlie out of the picture, David and Lisa Ann could have continued their relationship without fear of discovery. Additionally, there were financial benefits to be gained from Charlie's death. The detectives pressed David on these points, but he continued to deny any involvement in Charlie's death. Throughout the interrogation, David's responses fluctuated between calm and agitated. He seemed genuinely upset about Charlie's death, but was also defensive about his relationship with Lisa Ann. The detectives noted that while David had a clear motive, his emotional reactions made it difficult to gauge his true involvement. The detectives decided to dig deeper into David's financial transactions and personal communications to find more concrete evidence. They also planned to re-interview Lisa Ann to see if her story would change now that they had more information. By the end of the interview, David was allowed to leave, but the detectives made it clear that he was still a suspect. The new evidence and David's reactions provided valuable insights, but there were still many unanswered questions. The investigation continued as the detectives worked to piece together the full story behind Charlie's death. On March 25, 2001, the detectives received a breakthrough. The weather was rainy, and Detective Sarah Marlett was going through the evidence one more time when she found a hidden clue in the emails from the CD. One email from Lisa Ann to an unknown recipient detailed a plan to stage Charlie's death to look like a suicide. This was the missing piece they needed. Detective Marlett and Detective Joe Jack Solaire quickly reviewed their findings. They now had enough evidence to confront Lisa Ann. The emails, bank transfers, and her calm demeanor during questioning all pointed to her as the mastermind behind Charlie's death. She had planned to leave Charlie and start a new life in the Philippines. But when he discovered her plans and decided to divorce her, she decided to take drastic measures. On March 26, 2001, at 9:00 a.m., the detectives went to Lisa Ann's house. The weather was still gloomy, mirroring the gravity of the situation. Lisa Ann opened the door, surprised to see the detectives. When they told her she was under arrest for the murder of her husband, her face showed a mix of shock and anger. She tried to protest her innocence, but the detectives read her rights and took her into custody. At the police station, Lisa Ann was interrogated again. This time, faced with the overwhelming evidence, she broke down and confessed. She admitted that she had planned to kill Charlie to avoid the shame and financial ruin that would come with the divorce. She revealed that she had convinced him to drink heavily the night before, then shot him with a gun in his right hand to make it look like a suicide. The news of Lisa Ann's arrest shocked the community. Charlie's family, especially Jock, was devastated. Jock had never imagined that his sister-in-law could commit such a terrible act. He felt a mix of anger and betrayal, but also a sense of relief that the truth had finally come out. Lisa Ann's arrest also impacted David Palmer, who was questioned again but found not directly involved in the murder plan. He was, however, implicated in the financial schemes and faced his own legal troubles. As Lisa Ann awaited trial, the community of Charlotte tried to come to terms with the tragic events. Charlie's memory was honored by his friends and family, who found some solace in knowing that his death was not in vain and that justice had been served. The trial of Lisa Ann Mabry began on September 10, 2001, in Charlotte. The courtroom was filled with media and spectators eager to see justice served. The prosecution, led by attorney Mark Vila, a determined and experienced 45-year-old, argued that Lisa Ann had carefully planned and executed her husband's murder. Vila presented evidence of the hidden bank accounts, the staged suicide, and Lisa Ann's motive to avoid financial ruin and public shame. The defense attorney, Sula Tabi, a sharp and passionate 38-year-old, countered by painting Lisa Ann as a desperate woman trapped in an unhappy marriage. He argued that Charlie's alcoholism and erratic behavior drove Lisa Ann to make poor decisions, but insisted she was not guilty of murder. Tavi tried to cast doubt on the evidence, suggesting that someone else could have framed Lisa Ann. Throughout the trial, Charlie's family sat in the courtroom, their faces showing a mix of sorrow and anger. Jock Mabry, especially, found it hard to listen to the details of his brother's death and the betrayal by Lisa Ann. Friends and neighbors attended in support, hoping for a just outcome. The jury deliberated for 2 days before reaching a verdict. On September 22, 2001, they found Lisa Ann Mabry guilty of first-degree murder. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom was filled with a sense of relief and sadness. Charlie's family felt justice had been served, but the pain of losing him remained. Lisa Ann showed little emotion as the verdict was read. Her once confident demeanor was replaced by a resigned expression. The community of Charlotte reacted to the news with a mix of shock and closure. The trial had revealed the dark secrets behind a seemingly perfect life, and many found it hard to reconcile the charming real estate agent they knew with the convicted murderer. Attorney Mark Vila expressed satisfaction with the verdict, stating that justice had been served for Charlie Mabry. Defense attorney Sula Tabi expressed disappointment but acknowledged the jury's decision. The trial had been intense and emotional, leaving a lasting impact on everyone involved. In the aftermath of the trial, Charlie's family and friends continued to mourn his loss but found some comfort in the verdict. They hoped to rebuild their lives and remember Charlie for the loving husband, brother, and friend he was. The case also left a mark on the community, reminding everyone of the importance of looking beyond appearances and the consequences of deceit and betrayal. After the trial, life slowly began to move forward for everyone involved in the case. The community of Charlotte was still in shock, but they tried to return to their daily routines. Charlie's family struggled to cope with the loss and the betrayal they had faced. Jock Mabry, Charlie's younger brother, was deeply affected by the events. He had to come to terms with his own involvement with Lisa Ann and the impact it had on his brother's life. Jock decided to leave his job as Charlie's assistant and move to a different city to start fresh. He sought therapy to deal with his guilt and grief, determined to rebuild his life. Charlie's parents, who had been heartbroken by the murder, found solace in their remaining family and friends. They set up a scholarship fund in Charlie's name at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, where he had studied. This helped them feel like they were honoring his memory in a positive way. Lisa Ann Mabry was sent to the North Carolina Correctional Institution for Women. Life in prison was a stark contrast to her previous life of social gatherings and real estate success. She had a lot of time to reflect on her actions and the choices that led her to this point. Despite her efforts to appeal the conviction, her attempts were unsuccessful, and she remained in prison. David Palmer, Charlie's best friend, faced his own consequences. Although he was not charged with murder, his involvement in the financial schemes and the affair with Lisa Ann tarnished his reputation. He lost many clients and friends, and his business suffered. David decided to leave Charlotte and try to rebuild his career elsewhere, away from the shadow of the scandal. Detectives Sarah Marlett and Joe Jack Soler continued their work in the Charlotte Police Department. The case had been one of the most challenging of their careers, but it also brought them closer as partners. They were commended for their thorough investigation and dedication to solving the case. The experience made them more determined to seek justice in their future cases. The community, though scared by the tragedy, slowly began to heal. Neighbors and friends supported Charlie's family and each other, knowing that such a devastating event could happen to anyone. The case of Charlie Mabry remained a reminder of the dangers of deceit and the importance of staying vigilant. As the months passed, life in Charlotte returned to a new normal. The memory of Charlie Mabry lived on through the scholarship fund and the stories shared by those who knew him. His family and friends found ways to honor his legacy and move forward, even as they continued to grieve his loss.